What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and today we are talking about side jobs. We're going back to the Dresden Files. This is the short story anthology, the first one that is kind of in the reading order between Changes and Ghost Story. So after this one, we will be kind of going back to the main books, and we will be, of course, doing Ghost Story, which is my least favorite book in the series.
Spencer doesn't like Ghost Story.
Yeah, we've been told that for that episode, we need to have on V from Caffeinated Covers and Jake from or Jake Bishop from his self-titled channel, because I think it was V who didn't like Ghost Story and Jake did like Ghost Story.
Right. I need somebody on my side, dude.
Yeah, so we'd have like an even split
That'd be cool.
people that liked it.
We could just do a debate about why you think it's bad and why we think it's good.
I have absolutely no doubt that's what it will turn into.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be a ton of fun. And also, guys, I am so sorry. I have failed you. I have lost my usual background. Gabe and I have had the same Dresden Files backgrounds since we started our Dresden Files
are you
series.
talking about the one that's like the office door?
Yep.
You lost it?
I lost it. I restarted. I did a factory reset on this laptop, and I think it might be somewhere on my extended hard drive, but I'd have to scroll and scroll and scroll through like years of downloads to find it. So I will do that. Hopefully I'll have it back for our Ghost Story episode, but for the meantime, I'm like, okay, I'll throw his business card behind me. Go. It's kind of the same thing as what was on the door. Yep. So yeah, I'm pretty bummed. It's the first time that I love that background so much.
It's just crazy to think that we can't find it again, you know?
I know, dude. I have looked on Google. I've typed in like Harry. I found this one by typing in Harry Dresden Wizard, which is what I thought would make it pop up. I've tried Harry Dresden Office Door, Harry Dresden Office, all sorts of stuff.
Dang.
And I have not been able to find it. It's from the show. So I know that I could go to the first episode of the show and take a screenshot of like the first scene, which is where that door is from. Mm-hmm. And so I could do that, and I will do that if it comes down to it. But I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in my downloads. I just gotta go look for it and whatnot.
It's just wild to me to sometimes think about the fact that we have, the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
And you can't fucking find what you want to find.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, it's like
it befuddles me.
Yeah, when I first realized I had lost it, I was like, oh, of course I'll be able to find it. And like, I'll just do a Google search and look for it. And I just couldn't find it. So
crazy, dude.
I don't know. It's pretty wild. But anyway, guys, if you would like to reach out to us, you can do so on Twitter, Discord, and Patreon, all of which are linked down in the description. Over on Patreon, at any tier starting at $3, you get exclusive content of me and Gabe and sometimes our other co-hosts just talking about a bunch of off-topic stuff. We might talk some fantasy here and there, but we play games over there and just do a lot of different stuff. We watch movie trailers and go through and judge people on Reddit and stuff like that. We're always finding something interesting to do for that content. So if you would like to see more of us, and if you would like to support the channel so that we can continue to pay for, like editing, like Adobe Premiere and whatnot, and also get things like green screens and microphones, that would greatly help us. So patreon.com, it's linked down in the description, our actual page over there. Also liking and subscribing to the video, or subscribing to the channel but liking the video on YouTube helps us out a ton as well. Normally we would talk about what we've been reading lately, but I don't think I think it's just been side jobs. At least it has for me
Yeah.
since
Yeah,
our
no,
last
since the
episode.
last episode, yeah, it's just been
Yeah,
side jobs.
cool. So yeah, we're pretty much going to go straight into it. I'll say that all of these episodes are spoilers for the series up to this book. So we won't be spoiling anything from Ghost Story, even though we've read the whole series. We won't be spoiling anything from Ghost Story or like Cold Days, Skin Game, Peace Talks, Battleground. All those will not be spoiled, but everything up to and including side jobs will be. So that's your warning ahead of time, just so you know. But yeah, let's get right into it because I don't think I have any channel announcements or anything. I think we pretty much covered everything in the last video. However, I was just telling Gabe that our 100th episode is quickly approaching, and we will have an announcement for what that is on our end of the year Christmas episode. So I can't wait to tell you guys, and I hope that you tune in for that. But for now, let's get into side jobs. So, talking about side jobs just kind of in general, real quick, we're going to go story by story, and some of them are pretty short. And so we may just say a couple things about them and kind of move on to the bigger ones. There's probably, I don't know, maybe like 3 major stories that actually contribute to the series plot in general and have a little bit more meat on the bones. There's a bunch of ones that are shorter and very fun, but aren't like any. I mean, you could dig your teeth into them, but I feel like for the most part we want to stick to some of the bigger ones, but we will at least touch on all of them.
Mm.
So I'm thinking, Gabe, that at the end of the episode we decide what our favorite one from the book is.
That sounds great.
What our favorite short story
That sounds
is.
great.
For now, let's talk about what are just our general thoughts on side jobs, because this is a collection that I haven't read in quite a while. I think I don't know if
Likewise.
I don't know if I've ever done the actual audiobook of side jobs. I think I've just read it like physically back when I was reading them that way.
Yeah.
So it's probably been a while for you too, yeah, that you've gone through side jobs.
Definitely a while.
What some general thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, man, this is my first what feels like forever coming back to Dresden Files. And when I think about coming back to Dresden Files, it's like coming back to the next book that I've already read, 100 times. And so it was really cool to come back to, because I've only read this omnibus a handful of times, and it was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So I was really stoked. Yeah, I liked like you said, there's 2 or 3 really big stories that were absolutely just incredible. The rest, were awesome, but they were just kind of a nod, to the reader, nice and quick and short to the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was stoked to get back into it, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. I felt the same way. I was going through them, and there were some stories that I think I thought were in this one. Like I thought the Bigfoot stuff was in this one, but I think that's over in Briefcases. And yeah, I was surprised as I was going through it. I realized how long it's really been since I've read this omnibus, and a lot of the stories I had totally forgotten. Like we'll talk about Backup in a little bit, the Thomas POV, and that was one that I was going through and almost getting like brand new information. I was like, oh wait, did I know this? Like I don't remember this. I don't think I knew about this. And so it felt really good to, with how many times I've read through the Dresden Files, it was so nice to go through something where I'm getting something new. And I'm like,
totally.
And like technically I've read these before, but it's been so long. Yeah, it feels new.
Totally.
So so yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. And I even told you the other day, I was going through the short stories, and there's so many of them and so many little details here and there that I was like, I think I need to read through this again for the podcast. Like I think I need to do a second time. And so I read through the first time and then went through the second time, and even on the second read I was still hearing new things where I was like, oh, I didn't catch that,
Yeah.
a week ago when I was listening to for the first time, or reading through for the first time for this episode. And so yeah, that was cool. I love that Dresden Files is that way, where no matter how many times you go through it, you can always get a really, similar enjoyment each time, and even find new things. And it's not really what's the phrase, like diminishing returns. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like if you've
Yep.
read 10 times, the 10th time you're kind of slogging through.
Yeah.
It's like the first time is undoubtedly the best, but then after that it's still just always enjoyable. And I think that's what I love about these books so much. All right, so our first one here is a restoration of faith.
Yeah.
And there was a couple episodes ago, a couple like Dresden Files episodes ago,
Yeah.
you had mentioned there was some girl that got brought up, and you were like, isn't this the girl that's supposed to come up in the apocalyptic
Yeah.
trilogy at the
Yep.
end? And it wasn't the girl that we were talking about at the time, whoever that was, I
Yep.
forget. It's actually this girl,
Yeah.
Faith,
Faith.
who shows up in a restoration of faith. So I'll read the intro here from Jim Butcher. This takes place before Stormfront, so this is before the series even started, and we're seeing Dresden at Ragged Angel with Nick
Yep.
as a kind of like hired on private eye. Jim says, this is the first of the Dresden Files stories chronologically, and it was the first time I tried to write down short fiction for the professional market. I originally put it together as a class assignment at the University of Oklahoma's professional writing program more than 2 years before Stormfront found a home at ROC. This one won't win any awards because it is, quite frankly, a novice effort. It was perhaps the third or fourth short story I'd ever written, if you include projects in grade school. I had barely learned to keep my feet under me as a writer, and to some degree, that shows in this piece. Certainly, the editors to whom I submitted this story seemed to think it wasn't up to par for professional publication, and I think that that was a perfectly fair assessment. Read this story for what it is: an anxious beginner's first effort meant to be simple, straightforward, fun. And so I like how Jim Butcher kind of acknowledges, he didn't use that note to be like, well, I showed them, I
No.
made this awesome series. And it's like, while that's true, it's like he's like, it was like my one of the first things I did
Yeah.
before actually making, or he had written the Dresden Files, but it was one of the first things he had done before like publishing it, and as he was getting his foot in the door. And I think it takes a lot of humility on his part, and it shows his character to say, you know what, they were probably right for
Yeah.
turning this down because it wasn't my best work.
Yep.
And I really appreciate that. And he just wanted to include it because it's part of the Dresden Files timeline, and he just wanted to give it to us readers, even though he knows that it's not his best work. And I think it shows in little things like you can tell a little bit how he's evolved over the years, where his story structure is uh, much more not complicated, but the puzzle pieces fit together in more intricate ways, and he tends to foreshadow things a lot better now. And I think that Faith as a character was kind of is probably what he's referring to when he says that it was a novice effort, because although I liked Faith, you could tell that she's supposed to be like 9 years old, and she's not really acting like a 9-year old. She's acting like she would probably have been better written as like a, I don't know, 13 or 14-year-old
Yeah.
or something like that. But yeah, what'd you think of this story? Any thoughts on a restoration of faith?
Yeah. I mean, I would totally agree. It was nice to hear that from him. And again, it was just, he did it for us, right? He did it for the reader. That's just plain and simple why it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I liked it, and I liked Faith, and I would agree. She was pretty mature for a 7 or 8 year old or whatever. But I liked the story. It's just cool to see Harry back kind of in the beginning,
Yeah.
at Ragged Angel, and seeing, because he mentions that several times throughout the series.
Yeah.
And also, like, our first ever encounter with Harry encountering like a magical beast or whatever.
Right.
That was super cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was just a nice nod.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was cool because, like you said, we get to see Dresden at Ragged Angel and working with Nick. And it made me think, like, man, I mean, I know Jim has a lot on his plate, but I would love so many more short stories with him at Ragged Angel and kind of
Totally.
doing that kind of stuff, because Nick is in a situation where he's just got this private investigation business, and Harry's the wizard. It's not like Harry is working with another wizard. He's working with just a normal, like, vanilla mortal person. Yep. And so I thought the dynamic between them was really cool, because you kind of see at the end, Nick knows about the supernatural. He even asks Harry, like, oh, was that the troll or whatever? And Harry's like, yeah, that was him. And Nick, I forget what else Nick says. He says something else, like acknowledging like a spell or something like that. But
yep.
But yeah, I thought that the two of them were really cool. I liked how Nick was, he's kind of like this grumpy and cynical guy, and he's
Yep.
like, well, just leave the kid behind. Like, we're not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
They told the cops we were the one that kidnapped her. And Harry's like, look, I know, and you're not gonna leave this kid hung out to dry. Like, at the end of all of this, you're a good man.
Yep.
And you're gonna come get the kid. And Nick's like, fuck. And he
Yeah.
like
He's like,
drives
you got
over.
me. God damn it, you got me.
And we actually, not to give too much away, but we actually get to see Nick in the next book. And we get to see that he is in fact a decent person, despite his kind of cold and cynical exterior. And so I think this was a good way to kind of lead into Ghost Story, so that we can get a taste of him before we see him show up there.
I'm trying to think back, and I thought about this, the last couple of days I've been reading. And is there at any other point in the series, and this I guess would technically be a spoiler, but it's just a question.
Sure.
Did you ever see a troll and a bridge?
That is a good question, because I was thinking about it.
Or like, the typical troll under a bridge, I guess is, yeah.
Dude, I don't even know if we've seen another troll, because
okay. Yeah.
Because I was listening to the Dresden Files podcast today. I went and listened to what they had to say about side jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying that the way this troll behaved in this short story is not accurate to how they are in the actual series.
Yeah.
And because the troll dies and it opens up and all these other little trolls run out. And it made, but they didn't follow that up with any other information.
No,
so I was like, do we see a troll at another point in the series? I can't remember. And so yeah, that is a good question, because I heard that and I'm like, okay, so they must have some sort of reason for believing that Jim changed how the trolls work later on, but I don't remember when we would have seen one. So if one of our viewers knows, let us know in the comments down there. We also see Murphy for the first time in this book, and this is when she's a beat cop, and she tries to run Dresden down at first, and he kind of evades her, and then he kind of gives her the slip and goes into that little nook. I'll talk about more about that in a second. But yeah, we see, when everything comes to a head and he's fighting the troll, Murphy comes out of nowhere and like gets her baton around its throat and stuff, and then freaks out when it like blows her hat off and stuff. And then yeah, at the end, when the troll's defeated, she's kind of looking at it like, is that what I think that is?
Yeah.
And Harry's like, yep, that's a troll. And he kind of like officially meets her, and there's this moment where she's like, oh, you guys are from Ragged Angel, you look for lost kids. And he's like, yeah, we're not trying to kidnap this
Yep.
kid, we're trying to get her back to you. Like, you take her back to the parents. And Murphy, it says at the end there that she's kind of watching them leave, and Faith is like waving to them, and at the very end Murphy gets a smile on her face.
Yeah.
It was just this cool moment. It's like, oh, like that's how they met, because when
Yep.
we see her in Stormfront, he's like occasionally bumping into her.
Yeah.
And Stormfront wasn't their like first meeting. He had already known her for like a little while. And so it's kind of cool to see the origins of that.
Yep.
The last thing I want to mention with this short story is what he says to Faith at the end there when they're stuck in that little nook. Let me see if I can find it here in the book. I don't know if I have like an actual quote that I specifically liked, but I liked this whole moment where she kind of admits that her parents aren't very good parents, and
Yeah.
that they kind of like neglect her and stuff. And then
Yep. She says something like, maybe this is the quote you're looking for too just now, but she's like, yeah, my parents, I'm like fine china. I get taken out when people are over, and I get put away when, we're alone or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great part of it for sure. Yeah, she's kind of neglected, and her parents are just like these wealthy parents who, from what I understood from what Harry was saying, is they wanted her to appear they wanted it to appear as though she was kidnapped, because that raises their like social standing with their friends, like, oh, our daughter got kidnapped, and like they wanted a ransom.
The wow factor.
Yeah, exactly. And so I like that moment where she's like, I can't go back to them, like I just hate living there. And Harry pulls a ring off his finger, and he like makes it glow, and he puts it on her hand, and he's like, think of like the best moment that you've ever had. And she's like, well, my grandma, when I was young, she would come over on Christmas Eve, and we would stay up late, and she would let me open one present.
Yep.
And we would talk and giggle all night and tell stories. And then Harry like pulls his hand away, and the ring is glowing.
Yeah.
And oh man, it's just such a good moment.
Yeah, and he's like, remember when, when times are tough, there's always some light out there. Just remember this. Yeah, you should try and find it, dude. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start back here. She looked up at me, studying my face, my eyes. I shied away from the perception of that gaze. I need to go back, don't I? She asked. I brushed a stray bit of hair from her forehead. There are people who love you, Faith, or who one day will. Even if you can't see them beside you right here, right now, they're out there. But if you let the dark get into your eyes, you might never find them. So it's best to keep a little light with you along the way. Do you think you can remember that? She nodded up at me, her face lit by the light from the ring. Whenever it gets too dark, think of the good things you have, the good times you've had. It will help you, I promise. She leaned against me and gave me a simple, trusting hug. I felt my cheeks warm up as she did. Aw, shucks. And I think that was actually the big blocky one. That was the quote I was looking for, because I really like this idea of, but if you let the dark get into your eyes, you might never find them.
Yeah.
Talking about how, there may not be someone who like specifically loves you right now, but there will someday be.
Yeah.
And if you take this darkness that you're feeling now, if you take this depression that you're feeling now, and you carry that with you, you're never going to see the people who will eventually love you.
Yep.
And it makes me think of going through a breakup. I was thinking about this a lot today, or yesterday. So, after a breakup, there's been times where I have just completely shut down and not wanted anything to do with anybody. And like, I let the dark into my eyes, so to speak.
Yep.
And I missed the things that were happening around me, or the other, months down the road, I may have missed another girl that was interested or something. Matter of fact, I know for a fact I did. And, not just in the form of like relationships, but I feel like that can be with anything. If you let something, darken your eyes too much, you can miss the things that are good in the future.
Yep.
And I think as humans, our tendency is to like hold on to that because we feel safe in that shadow and we feel safe in like our misery a little bit. But the fact is, that is kind of protection for a little while. But if you hold on to that for too long, you're going to miss good things down the road completely. And so, yeah, that really struck a chord with me. Not to go, I know I went super deep with that.
No, it's all good.
That's,
and can you also imagine like hearing that when you're, 9 years old and you're going through like a really rough time?
I wish somebody had told me.
Life-changing. Yeah. Absolutely. Me too. Yeah. Life-changing, man.
Yeah, that was a lesson that I learned far too late. So yeah, last thing I'll say about this is at the very end, I love this whole quote, especially the way Marster says it in the audiobook. Modern living might suck, and the world we've made can be a dark place, but at least I don't have to be there alone. I put an arm around Nick's shoulder and grinned. It's like I keep telling you, man, you've got to have faith. And I just feel like this is such a theme of the Dresden Files. Like, he says that in so many books where he's like, we're going through a dark time right now, but I have my friends that I can count on, and I have these people that I can lean on. And, he always has faith that things are going to get better. He's kind of like cynical without being doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think at the end of this thing, everything he said there, that whole piece of text, I feel like that's very much the theme of the Dresden Files.
Totally.
So next we have Vignette, and that is between Death Masks and Blood Rites. And Jim says, this was a very short piece I wrote at the request of my editor, Jennifer Heddle, who needed it for some kind of promotional thing, one of those free sampler booklets they sometimes hand out at conventions, I believe. I lost track of it in the clutter of life, then realized the deadline was the following morning. It probably would have been helpful to have remembered at 7 or 8 instead of at 2 a.m. I'm not even sure I can claim to be the author of this piece, since it was almost entirely written by a coalition of caffeine molecules and exhausted twitches. I thought that was pretty funny. Like, you forget about all the little pieces of promotional stuff that they write as well. Like, this isn't even meant to be like a main like timeline canon piece. It's just like some piece of promotional what's it.
Yep.
So I thought that was kind of funny that he wrote it at like 2 a.m. He's like, shit, that's due in the morning.
With
just
like
had to bust
5 hours left. Yeah.
But yeah, it's between Death Masks and Blood Rites, which I think is funny that he even gave like a timeline to it.
Yeah.
Because nothing really happens in this that would warrant it being, stuck
in a certain place. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But Bob and Harry are basically looking over his new business cards or flyers that he printed out. And I love this. Harry's looking at it and he's like, I don't get it. And Bob says, it's flat. And he says, they usually are. I don't think they offer raised lettering. Not literally flat, dimwit. Flat in the aesthetic sense. And Bob's talking about it like being boring and unimaginative. And he's like, oh, you should put in that you fight monsters and all this stuff. And Harry's like, I don't want to attract those kind of customers. I just want to find people's, lost items and
Cartes,
stuff. Yeah. And so, yeah, they're going back and forth. Bob says, it's boring. Oh, I said, I rubbed my jaw. You think I should have gone 4-color? Bob stared at me for a second and said, I have nightmares about hell, where all I do is add up numbers and try to have conversations with people like you.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then the last little note I have here is, Bob is saying like, oh, you'll get way more business this way. And he says, I don't do this for money. And Bob says, then why do you do it? And Harry says, because someone has to.
That's right.
It's like,
good old Harry Dresden.
I am Batman.
I am Batman.
Someone has to save this city. Then we get Something Borrowed from My Big Fat Supernatural Wedding, edited by P.N. Elrod, and it takes place between Deadbeat and Proven Guilty. Jim says, I wrote this for the very first anthology in which I'd ever been invited to participate. I'd met Pat Elrod at a convention and thought she was quite a cool person. And when she asked me to take part in her anthology, I was more than happy to do so. When I wrote this story, I was thinking that the alphas hadn't gotten nearly enough stage time in the series thus far, and it seemed like a good opportunity to give them some more attention, while at the same time showing the progression of their lives since their college days, which I felt was best demonstrated by Billy and George's wedding. Inane trivia: while I was in school writing the first 3 books of the Dresden Files, my wife Shannon watched Ally McBeal in the evenings, often while I was plunking away at a keyboard. I didn't pay too much attention to the show, and it took me years to realize I had unconsciously named Billy and Georgia after those characters in Ally McBeal. Who knew? TV really does rot your brain. Dude, Ally McBeal, what a throwback from the 90s. Or it might have been like early 2000. Like,
never saw it.
Dude, it's a show about how do I explain it? I think so she's a lawyer. And if I remember, she takes on like really dumpy cases, just kind of like scumbag, or maybe not even scumbag, but just like really low level dirty cases. And she herself is kind of a train wreck. She's like I can't remember if she was like an alcoholic, but she's one of those, the first episode is her like rolling out of bed super late, her hair's a mess, and she like takes a swig from like a beer bottle and gets going for the rest. She's like
the old morning swig of that beer from last night. Holy crap.
Exactly. Yeah.
I never understood that, dude. Like, why would you even portray that? Who does that? A warm beer. I get it. Like if you want to portray somebody drinking in the morning, grab a cold beer, drink it in the morning.
Oh, I see. Yeah. But yeah, I think she was that kind of character, if I'm remembering correctly. But then in the first episode, one of her clients, I'm sure people in the comments are going to yell at me for getting this wrong, but I know in the first episode, she gets stuck with a kid, and I can't remember if it's her client's kid that she has to watch. And so he like kind of hangs around for like the next, I don't know. I didn't see the whole show, but I assumed that the kid was like a main character because that's kind of what he was set up as. And so she's like this dumpy attorney, and she's also got to take care of like this, I don't know, like 8-year-old, 7-year-old kid.
Gotcha.
And it was a great show. It actually makes me want to go back and watch it, because I remember I watched it with my mom and I laughed my ass off.
Nice.
Like, it was so funny. So yeah, any thoughts on Billy and Georgia's wedding?
Yeah, man, this is one of the first ones that I should say like remembered reading. I remember them all, but I really like this one. Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing the alphas, and because we always, George and Billy are married. We always see them that way, right? They're well, at least now, I should say.
Yeah, in the later books. Yeah.
Yep. And so yeah, it's kind of a cool story, man. I love the I love the villain. I just liked it. It's a good one. Yeah, the stepmom. Yes, she's definitely a villain as well.
Oh God, she was awful. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, when she showed up, I was like, wait, that's Georgia's like mom? Like, what? She's such an asshole. Like, I was not expecting that at all. And then we have Jenny Greenteeth, who we saw in Summer Night, and maybe one other one. But it was awesome to see her get torn to shreds.
Yeah.
They did kill her, right? If I remember correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was cool. Kind of figuring that all out. Like Georgia goes missing, and Harry's trying to track her down, and then you have the conundrum of Billy's like, no, Georgia's here, we're about to get married,
Yeah.
where are you? And he's like, that's not Georgia, but he has no way to tell him.
Yep.
In kind of the race to stop the ceremony. um and then Murphy meets Bob for the first time in this
Yeah.
story. Like I didn't realize that she had never met Bob before this, and so that was kind of cool to see her being like, holy shit, it's a talking skull.
Yeah.
And then there was a funny joke. Murphy says, what happens if he marries a fairy? And Dresden says, conservatives get real upset. And then I let out a battle cry. Some would have mistaken it for an unmanly yelp of fear, but trust me, it was a battle cry.
Yep.
And then, this was a cool bit of magic. So when they're down there with the Shelly Cobbs or whatever, I couldn't tell what he was saying.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But he puts up a wall of fire to separate himself from the Shelly Cobbs, and then he makes a shield and he turns it into a table above the fire and has Murphy run on top of it to get over to Georgia and then jump back and get Georgia across using the table. And I'm like, fuck, that was cool.
Yep.
That was so cool. I had never thought of him using one of his shields as like
an
actual, like he could use it as like a dinner plate. Like,
yeah, totally.
Like, that'd be so sick.
That would be cool.
And then Billy and Georgia get actually married in St. Mary of the Angels.
Yeah.
But before that, Harry and Murphy share a little bit of a kiss. Like he goes to resuscitate her and she like wakes up a little bit beforehand, and he's like trying to resuscitate her, and he's like, she like kind of kissed me back. Like there was like a little bit.
And I think Murphy even says something like, oh, it tastes like,
punch. You have punch breath.
Yeah, you have punch breath. Yep.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else. The stepmom was just, oh man, I loved every time she showed up, and Harry would like mouth off to her.
Yes.
And then the tailor, the guy that was like fitting his tux, and he kept like poking him with the needle, and Harry was getting upset. That was super funny as well.
I love it when Harry puts in, a cocky bastard in their place,
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then what's funny is that I can't remember. I'm sure it was probably Georgia, I think, right? And Georgia's like, why did you have to, or Billy, whoever, why did you have to talk to her like that? And Harry's like, just how it works. I'm not gonna deal with that shit.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got It's My Birthday Too from Many Bloody Returns, edited by Charlene Harris, and it takes place between White Knight and Small Favor. Jim says, I've met people who are sweeter and nicer and more likable than Charlene Harris, but I really can't remember when. Every author I've ever talked with who knows Charlene just couldn't be happier about the success of her books and the HBO series True Blood. She's that nice. I can't even bring myself to be jealous. She's that nice. So when she invited me to contribute, I said, heck yeah, using a birthday theme, since the book originally was supposed to be published on Vlad Dracula's something 100th birthday, was sort of a challenge. Birthdays are about families, whether they're a biological family or one that's come together by choice. It's your family who gathers to celebrate the anniversary of you. It's kind of a profound thing when you think about it, but Dresden hadn't ever really associated his birthday with that kind of joy, only with the knowledge that he'd never really had a family. So I decided to do a story about Harry coping with the unfamiliar role of being the guy celebrating the life of his half-brother. I found a very good mall in Chicago. I found a very good mall in Chicago that I could demolish with the usual Dresden-esque shenanigans. Set the story against the backdrop of a vampire-ish LARP, and I knocked this one out over the course of about 3 weeks. I like that he's like, I found a perfectly
Yeah.
suitable mall that I could
That Harry can take
demolish.
care of. Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Any initial thoughts on It's My Birthday Too? This is the one where he like shows up and Thomas is in the
Yep.
mall LARPing.
Or he's
There's
like, I think he's like, he's worried about Thomas, right? Or something along those lines. And he,
well, he's got a birthday gift for him.
oh, okay. So he's
Yeah.
like going to, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going, he like calls Thomas's cell phone and he's like, "Oh, I'm at the mall at like midnight
Yes.
or whatever it
Okay.
is."
Yeah. And Harry's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like this one. Out of the ones that we've talked about so far, this one is the first one that kind of like, got me in that like action,
Yeah.
intense combat feels, which in the Dresden
Right.
Files is very important to me.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, so I was stoked for this one. I love the whole idea of the LARPing thing and Thomas and his,
Yeah.
his French,
Accent.
guys or whatever. Yeah. And, so yeah, I like this one.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. It was good to see just kind of Dresden and Thomas together,
Yep.
and the nods to White Knight with Thomas like having his salon and his
Yep.
identity as his like secret identity as a like a gay hairdresser
Hairstylist.
basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I like the moment at the beginning where we see like Molly and Harry, and he's just kind of doing the mentor thing. Like this is right around my favorite part of the timeline in the Dresden Files, which is around like the, proven guilty, White Knight, small favor, that whole kind of area, where he's mentoring Molly, and at the beginning she's like, "Oh well, uh, can you give me a ride?" Or no, he says, "Are your parents coming to get you?" And she's like, "No, are you crazy?" She's basically says it's Valentine's Day. They're banging
Yeah,
upstairs,
they're
and
busy.
they had the older kids like wear out the younger kids so that they would sleep through all the noise. And I'm just like, good lord, like
Yeah.
I'm just picturing Molly like growing up like in a room just hearing
It's
like
like,
banging
oh
down the
God.
hall, like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because you don't really, at least I don't really think of Michael and Charity as like a sexy couple. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's funny to hear
But then
her
you,
kind of
yeah,
mention that.
because I would agree with you. I would say that I don't, it's hard to picture them doing it, but at the same time, like you're like, married couples
Yeah, of
have
course.
sex. It's
Yeah.
part of it. So yeah, but it
Yeah.
is weird. It's a definitely dichotomy
Yeah.
because Michael's like this, just perfect.
Stalwart.
Yes,
Yeah.
stalwart and very not uptight, upright and like,
Yeah.
good in
Yeah.
every sense of the word.
I love this quote from Dresden when he's describing Molly. He says, "She was tall for a woman and was built like a schoolboy's fantasy of a Scandinavian exchange student."
Yeah.
um, oh, and so then Molly, she's like, "Why are you bringing Thomas a present?" And he's like, "Oh, well, and she's like, "You didn't bring my dad a present for like Christmas."
Yeah.
And Harry's like, "Oh, well, I didn't really want to, whatever."
Yep.
And then he looks at her and he's like, "You figured it out. How?" And she says, "I've seen you two fight. Have you seen how many brothers and sisters I have? I've seen sibling conflicts."
Yeah.
And this is interesting because this is what we just saw in changes between the Red Court and Ebenezer. They
Mm.
figured out that he was
Yeah.
Maggie's father, like Harry's mother's father, because of the two of them fighting over dinner.
Yeah.
And then they kind of linked that back to Dresden, like, oh, Dresden is his grandson. And so it makes me wonder, like, if Molly can figure it out, like how many other people can figure out that Thomas and him are related. It's something that is gonna happen
Oh,
in
totally.
in future books.
Yeah.
And not like spoiling the next, but I'm just saying it's something that's bound to happen in
Yeah.
the future books that we
Yep.
haven't seen yet. So yeah, because I'm like, man, if Ariana was able to figure out that Ebenezer and Maggie were related, and Molly can figure out that Thomas and Dresden are related. Like, ooh,
Oh
it
yeah.
seems like a pattern that's gonna repeat.
Yep.
You know. Oh yeah. Then there was kind of this sweet moment where she says, "You haven't been able to give family presents, and Thomas probably doesn't receive very many, huh?" And then Harry says in his own inner monologue,
Yes, I remember
he's
this.
like, "Molly was growing up into a person I thought I was going to like."
Yes,
Yeah,
I love it.
it's great.
Melts my heart.
Yeah. And then Harry shows up and he sees these well, first he shows up with Molly and
Yeah.
he got to do like a cool mentoring thing. He's like, "What do you see, Grasshopper?" And she's kind of like looking at all the things and like deducing what the scene looks like.
Yep.
And then he's like, "You forgot one thing." He's like, "You need to look up." And there was like a security camera that was broken
Yeah.
next to the light. And she's like, "Oh, I missed that." And so I love those little moments of him
Teaching
like,
moments. Yep.
yeah, those little teaching moments. But these two cloaked guys go inside and
And
then
Harry like jumps out of the car. Stay here. Keep the
yeah,
car running. Like,
right.
goes off and he's gonna do his stuff.
He's like got, I don't think he had the gun out, but he had his like hand on his
Yep.
gun in his
Yep.
pocket. And then he realizes they're two kids that just like left to go smoke pot. And
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
this weird like LARPing thing. Do you know what a LARP is? Have you
Yeah.
ever
Live
seen
action
this
role
stuff?
play.
Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was funny. I
Yeah.
feel like Jim must be really into this stuff because he has a way of working these kind of things into his stories,
Yep.
like the beer festival and like the Arcanos games, like basically Dungeons and Dragons, and then you have like LARPing and you have like cosplay and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I think he's really into that stuff. But um, yeah, he meets Sarah, I think her name is, who's like this total bombshell that works with Thomas.
Yep.
And then what happens for, I think the lights go out and
Yeah.
then something
Yeah.
over the speaker. There's the
Well, no. So
vampire.
I think that's. Oh no. The maintenance guy goes
Hmm.
out to fix that camera. He comes in, blah blah blah, talks to him.
Yeah.
And then Molly, I'm pretty sure it's Molly, right? Molly's in there with
Yeah.
him at some point. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Molly then looks
She
outside.
feels
Yeah. And then
she
Harry's like,
feels
what
the
is
death.
it? And
Yeah.
yeah, she feels the death. Exactly. And then the lights go out. And then we get crazy ass bitch on the intercom. You didn't love me like I loved you.
Yeah, she apparently she wasn't like treated very kindly by the people who play that game.
Yeah. Well, she was like part of it. She was
Yeah,
like a LARPer back before she became a vampire.
right.
And so it's just like a revenge kick. Just
Yeah,
like now I've got power. I hate all of you. I'm going to make something happen.
right. Um yeah, so there's a bunch of action stuff that I didn't really write down.
Yeah,
I did enjoy this story quite a bit.
me
I
too.
I liked all the minute to minute combat and just Thomas and Harry kind of taking
Yep.
on these vampires.
For
Um
some reason, I really like when Harry's in a situation with like civilians that don't believe in what's
yeah,
happening, and he has to just do what he has to protect him, but they either have to trust that he will protect them or freak out and not know what's going on and panic.
right.
And that happens all throughout the series, and I've just always enjoyed when they realize that holy shit, he just saved my life, or he is protecting us, and they're like, I can't explain what this is, but
Yeah.
this man's saving my life. So
Yeah, what 100%. And I like he's like kind of dragging Sarah around
yeah.
with him because she knows the way through the
Yes,
mall.
exactly. She knows where the office is, where the security kiosk is, all that stuff.
Right. And so I loved at one point he asked for her shoes and
Yeah,
he's
that's
like, "Are
right.
these Gucci?" She's like,
That's
"No, they're
right.
Prada."
Yeah.
And he takes them to
That
the
was
cobbler.
another really cool thing that I was not expecting
Yeah.
to have happen. And I was like, what? It's another instance of like for instance, Thomas and
Mhm.
his hairstylist, or like just a supernatural entity that is like maintaining a business in the mall. Like it was
Yeah.
wild, dude.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And I don't remember when we saw them before. It must have been like,
I don't either. I never did. Yeah.
yeah, it had to have been maybe in like Summer Night or something, because he references the fact that, you know, because he even says to the security guard, he's like, oh yeah, I remember you from the whole shoegasm thing. And I'm trying to remember when that is, because
Man,
there's no other.
Yeah,
there,
I
there-
really don't. I'm like
yeah,
wondering if it was actually in the series.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because they're like, these are all the short stories, so it's
Yeah.
not like there wasn't any short stories before these. So I'm like, it had to have been just like a quick moment in
Quick
like,
nod. Yeah.
yeah, just something. Maybe it was even just like a reference of a reference, like one of those
Mm.
times where Harry's like, yeah, over the summer I helped
Yeah.
these fairies get set up with a shoe shop in the mall, and that's like all it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, there had to have been some sort of, because normally I would think like it's just some random thing, but he mentions it twice, because he
Yeah.
mentions it to the security guard, and then he says it again to the actual fairies that are running
Yep.
the cobbler like shoe place. um he's like, remember I helped you get set up with this place,
Yep.
you owe me, like. And
And
yeah,
they threatened to ruin the Prada shoes, and they're like, no, 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 no,
yeah,
no.
don't do it,
We'll
don't
do
do it,
whatever
don't.
you want. We'll do
Yeah.
whatever you want.
And so yeah, then he gets the cobbler set up with Michael's house, and he's like, I know a family with like 7 kids that could
Yeah.
use, cobblers to fix their shoes. And so now presumably they're going over there
Yeah.
and like fixing the carpenter shoes and stuff. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
It's cool.
Okay, so then he fights the vampire, and he sets the vampire on fire in the building.
Yeah.
And he says, he says, oh, what the hell, the building was burning down anyway. He's got such a thing for
Burning down buildings.
buildings burning down.
Mhm.
And I love that at this point he's just so flippant
He's
about it.
like, fuck it.
He's like, one more fireball isn't gonna stop
Yeah,
the building
exactly.
from burning down.
Exactly.
So and then the Rock'em Sock'em robots.
Yes. Oh, well,
Thomas
because it was broken on the ground, and Thomas was like, well, what was it? And
Yeah,
Harry's just like, Rock'em Sock'em robots.
yeah.
Like, oh.
And Thomas is like, why would you get me that? And Harry says that when he was a kid in the orphanage, he saw a commercial for these Rock'em Sock'em robots, and he always wished that he had a brother that he could buy Rock'em Sock'em
Oh.
robots for,
Yeah.
to play it with him. But he never had one, and he thought that if he was able to give someone the Rock'em Sock'em robots, that he would feel like less alone in the world. And so this being the first birthday that Harry has actually gotten Thomas something, he buys this Rock'em Sock'em robots to kind of fulfill that fantasy of his. And I thought that was really cool. I always get like a big emotional boner for when like Harry
Emotional boner. I feel like those two words shouldn't be
in
anywhere near each other, dude.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be anywhere near each other.
Oh, but yeah, anytime Harry talks about like his missing family, or like his
Oh, dude, it
like
gets you
his
right,
desired
right in
family.
the feels, dude.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. All right, so next up is HEOROT. I think,
Is that how you say that?
or HEOROT. I don't know.
I was gonna say HEOROT, but
HEOROT.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know though. I have no idea if
Yeah,
that's right.
I have no idea. I can't even remember how
Yeah.
James Marsters pronounced it.
Yeah.
But it is from My Big Fat Supernatural Honeymoon, edited by P.N. Elrod, which I believe Jim will say in a minute is the sequel to My Big Fat Supernatural Wedding.
Mm-hmm.
It takes place between White Knight and Small Favor. Jim says, once more, Pat invited me to come play at her literary clubhouse, and once more I cheerfully agreed. What can I say? I fear change. The last anthology's theme had been weddings, and this one was the logical sequel, honeymoons. Research into the etymology of honeymoon led me back to its roots in Scandinavia and in the British Isles, where a newlywed bride and groom would depart their village and remain in solitude for a lunar month while being well provided with mead, which is made from honey. I think the idea was to establish beyond a reasonable doubt that any child conceived in that time was the legitimate heir of the groom, or maybe it was just to get a pretty young bride liquored up and wild for a month. Viking girls gone wild, as it were. I have no idea if the information I found mostly on the internet was academically accurate. For my purposes, that wasn't nearly as important as finding a solid inspiration. So, from Newlyweds, Mead, and North Scandinavian backgrounds, I developed a story using everything from the Dresden Files storyline that had the flimsiest of connections to these base ideas. I put them all together, plopped Harry down in the middle of it, and gleefully watched as it caught fire. So this is the one where there's a guy's wife has gone missing, and Mac is there. There's like a beer fest, and Harry kind of goes off to find her, and he ends up meeting up with Guard.
Yep.
And they track down like this big monster called a Grendelkin.
Yep.
To get her back. Do you have any immediate thoughts on this one?
Not immediate thoughts. I keep mixing this one up in my head with the actual beer one.
Yeah, last call.
Last call. Yeah. So, but I do remember it, and I remember that the scenes with Guard and Harry, I of course always enjoy. I love them together. I think,
Yeah.
Guard's cool as shit, right? She's a fucking Viking.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but yeah, I was smiling while I was listening to it. Probably wouldn't put it on my top 10 list for these, but yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this one was cool because it's where we find out what Gar's real name is, Sigrun.
Yep.
And we kind of find out that she is an actual Valkyrie.
Yeah.
I was surprised to realize that wasn't something we found out in the main series. Yeah. It was something we found out.
Well, we also find out that she's a chooser also.
A chooser. Oh, like bring people to Valhalla.
Yeah, chooser of the slain. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And we see her work with her. I always think that her magic is so interesting.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't cast spells or anything, but she has
like
these
talismans and ruins and
and she uses them to like set traps and stuff. And that's kind of cool. I would love to know. I don't think we've gotten any like detailed description of how that works in the series yet, but I would love to know more about that. Let's see. And so this is kind of paraphrased, but I remember early on there was this quote that I liked. I don't know if I can find it here. Let me look real quick. If not, I'll paraphrase it. Okay, yeah, here it is. Yes, he said. He licked his lips. She went to pick up some napkins from the bar right over there. She wasn't 20 feet away, and somehow she just vanished. And then Harry says in his inner monologue, personally, I was more inclined to go with the cops' line of reasoning than the kids. People in general tend to be selfish, greedy, and unreliable. There are individual exceptions, of course, but no one ever wants to believe that the petty portions of human nature might have come between themselves and someone they care about. And he's referring to the cop saying, like, your girlfriend or your wife probably ran off.
Yep.
And I kind of like this. I like this quote, like the cynical part of me likes this quote where it's like, no one ever wants to believe that the petty portions of human nature might have come between themselves and someone they care about. Because, I'm sure we all have some sort of experience in life where, you think someone so well, and then they do something and it's like, I didn't know you could do that at all. Like, I didn't know you had that in you. And so I thought that quote was pretty good.
Yeah.
He meets up with Guard and she's kind of like answering some of his questions, but she's being really cagey about it all. And he finds out that this thing is a Grendelkin, which is likely a descendant from the Grendel from like the Beowulf, like the ancient Beowulf story. And what he's planning to do is he like kidnapped this virgin girl and he's planning to impregnate her to create new Grendelkin.
Yeah, it's the only way they can reproduce is with the virgin.
Right. And with the mead.
Yeah.
One thing I did think was pretty interesting from this story is Kane, the guy that was like kind of a bully.
Yeah.
It was just like I was like, man, this guy is such a comical, I don't know, he's such a bad dude in such a comical way. Like it's like almost like overbearingly like annoying and aggravating.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I just thought like his whole character, like I wonder, I don't know. He was like asking the guy Braddock. He was like, "Oh, did your girl go and find a real man?" It's like, what?
Yeah, you're like,
fuck?
really, dude?
Yeah, like, are you serious?
Like, even for like, a tough guy or bully, like that is so fucking cliche.
Yeah, and
it's like absurdly.
Yeah, and it reminded me of like the bad guy from like the early like 2000s sports movies. It's like really you're getting this aggro over like a beer competition. Like, are you serious? And speaking of the beer competition, I also kind of like this moment where man, because I hate people like this, and it just like when Harry said this, I was like, yeah, dumbass. Like he's talking to Braddock and he's like, yeah, we just got married yesterday. And Harry's like, and you're at instead of going on your honeymoon, you're at like a brewing thing today. And the guy's like, well, it's the only time that I was able to like come do it. And I like want to open up my own thing. And like, I wanted to, I wanted to come to this competition. And like his voice like starts to trail off as he realizes that this is like significantly less important than going on his honeymoon.
Yeah.
And you can see him realize it in real time.
Yep.
And just like, oh shit, I'm stupid. And I just wanted to be like, yeah, you fucking idiot. Like, and then they fight. So later they fight the Grendelkin, and the Grendelkin is completely naked and it has
fully
a boner.
Aroused.
Yeah, fully aroused.
Yeah.
And Harry says, I've seen smaller fire extinguishers. It's like, oh wow, that's an image.
Yep, that's an image.
And then at the end, Harry kisses Guard.
Yeah.
Kisses him. I'm like, oh shit. So yeah, that was kind of
it's another person cool that Harry can write down in his little black book.
Yeah, I'm like, it made me think about it more. And I was like, dude, what if Harry and Guard got together? I'd ship that, I think. Like I like him and Guard together.
Yep.
Yeah, overall, good story. Definitely wasn't my favorite.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is Day Off from Blood Light, edited by Kevin J. Anderson. I'm assuming Blood Light is he'll explain it. It's some sort of anthology. It takes place between Small Favor and Turncoat. Kevin Anderson talked to me at a New York City Comic-Con and asked me if I'd be interested in participating in a new kind of anthology, for me anyway, in which authors known for their work in supernatural and horror fiction tried their hands at comedy. I loved the idea. Poor Dresden. I mean, I keep putting the weight of the world on the poor guy's shoulders, and I feel really bad about it. No, really, I'm serious. I feel awful, honestly. Okay, well, less awful and more gleeful, but you get the point. It's easy to torture Harry when there are master vampires and super ghouls and ghosts and demons and ogres traipsing all over the scenery, but I found myself intrigued with the idea of making him suffer just as much frustration and embarrassment in a situation where his opponents and problems were relatively trivial. I don't really know how other people reacted to poor Harry struggling to get to enjoy a day off work, but I thought it was pretty darn funny. So yeah, this was one of my favorites, but it wasn't like the deepest one. It wasn't like the most like, you know, you can sink your teeth into it. I just love this idea of, you know, we start off with him playing this game of Arcanos, which is cool because we've never actually gotten to see him play the actual game. We've always seen him like getting ready for it or finishing up or whatever. And so it was cool getting him to see that, getting to see him play that. But then before he leaves, Andy is like, "Hey, I got to talk to you." He's like, "It can wait." He's got a day off the next day, and he's got a really hot date planned with Lucio. They're going to go like horseback riding and spend the whole day together. But one thing after another happens on this day off. And we get Molly coming by in the morning, and she's like, "Oh, no, I'm just going to go downstairs and work on potions. Like you said, I could do it unsupervised." And he's like, "God damn it." And then he's got Kirby and Andy coming by completely naked
with fucking fleas, pretty much, dude.
Like magical fleas. And he's like, "Oh my god, what am I gonna do with you guys? Come in." And then as all that's going on, Molly like explodes something in the basement, and she's like, "No, I got it contained." But then she like keeps blowing stuff up down there, and it gets worse and worse. And then he gets a pipe bomb, or what he thinks is a pipe bomb, thrown through his window because of the other like warlock kids that were there earlier. And it says like, "Don't mess with us or it'll be a real bomb next time." And that was interesting too, because he like showed up and they're like, "Hey, you messed up a curse that I put on this lady." And Harry's like, "Oh, I thought it was just bad feng shui." And they're like, "No, that was my wrath." And he's like, "Okay, well, sorry about your wrath." Like, you know? And then they're like, "Defend yourself." And they like bring out like all their like sheep like cosplay staffs and stuff. And he's like, "Okay." And he like pulls out his 44.
That's right.
And they're like, "What the fuck?"
Oh,
dude, that was such a great scene. And then like everything with like Andy and Kirby, like because of whatever's going on, she's all like super horny and like coming on to Harry, and her and Kirby are like getting down on the floor.
Exactly, they both are. And then not only that, on top of all that, then Lucio shows up, right? To this just crazy scene. And Harry's like, "This is not what it looks like, I promise you." And she just kind of chuckles. She's like, I can't remember exactly what she said.
She says, "By the time you get to my age, your insecurities are either you've either gotten over your insecurities or they're there to stay."
Yeah.
And so she's kind of like, "I get it. Like something crazy happened." And
does he have to, at one point, did he have to drag Molly out of the cellar?
And
she was like naked from the top up and just like not even breathing. He's like, "What the fuck is going on, dude?"
Oh, dude, I have in my notes here that I would be like, he had to have been so fucking pissed with Molly. Oh my god. Like I would love to see like what her punishment was
for
after
real.
that, because she,
or how she would even apologize for something like that.
Oh my god, because she like went to him and she's like, "Everything's gonna be fine. Like I'm just working on my stuff."
And not only that, after the first time she fucked up, she's like, "No, I've got it under control. Everything's fine." No, you did not have it under control.
For real. It just like keeps blowing up. It's like, oh my god. And especially because his lab already has like depleted uranium dust
all
and
sorts
stuff
of
down there. It's like, dude, you could like blow this whole fucking boarding house to Timbuktu. Let's see, what other notes do I have here? Oh yeah, Mr. ran out the door seeking a safer environment, like traffic.
That's awesome.
I thought that was good. And then at the beginning, when they're playing Arcanos, Harry gets mad at Billy, who's playing the wizard, and Harry is playing like the big like barbarian warrior guy. And he's like, that's not how fire works. You can't just make it stop right in front of somebody's face. And Billy's like, no, it's a game. Like, you have to chill. There's rules to it. And Harry's like, but that's not how fire works. And Jim, in interviews, has said that this is why he can't play the like Dresden Files tabletop game.
Yeah.
Because he would be like, no, like that's not how that character works, or that's not how like the rules of magic
be
work in this world.
hypercritical. Yeah.
So he's like, I can't play my own RPG.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked this one a lot. I thought it had a lot of like really funny moments, and it was interesting at the end. He like put Andy and Kirby into a circle, and it like cut them off from all of the crazy stuff that was happening. He's like, stay there, don't move, or you'll go crazy again.
Or he says something like, sit and stay.
Yeah,
you know, like good dogs.
Yeah. And then at one point he asked them, like, have you guys been getting it on while you're shapeshifted?
Yeah,
oh my
that's
god.
Right.
It's like, that's so gross.
Yeah.
And then yeah, Lucio shows up and he's like, sorry that he's
sorry about the 2 naked women, 1 half naked woman.
Yeah.
That are all laying on my floor.
Yeah, exactly.
I apologize.
Yeah. And he's like sorry, like I ruined your date. And she's like, would if you had to do it all over again, would you have done anything differently? He's like, no. And she's like, then it's time well spent.
That's right. And you didn't ruin anything.
I love Lucio so much.
Awesome, and she is so cool.
I wish that she had like stayed with him, because I think that she's just the perfect.
Yeah.
Just the perfect.
She's like the counterbalance for Harry, dude. It's perfect.
Oh man, she's such a good one. But yeah, I thought it was cool how down to earth she was, and then she's like, all right, well let's take advantage of the rest of the night, and so then they go on to like have their date with the rest of the night. But yeah, that was a good one. So here's the big one, and this is probably, this one and the Warrior are probably the two that we'll have the most talk about. They're definitely the two that I have the most notes for. But this is Backup, novelette from Subterranean Press, and that's right, this got made. I've been meaning to get it. It got made into its own book, like its own
cool,
its own little like short story novel book. And it's like hardcover, and it's got Thomas on the front of it. It looks really cool. And I think that for Briefcases, the Marcone short story got its own little novelette as well.
Cool.
But yeah, this is one that I've been meaning to find. So this takes place between Small Favor and Turncoat. And Jim says, this story was really fun to write. I'd been wanting to show a little more of Thomas and his world for several years, but it just hadn't ever been a feasible thing for Harry to encounter. The vampires of the Dresden Files, the White Court especially, see themselves as a nation of outcasts banded together by similar concerns and dangerous enemies. The kind of culture that emerges from that sort of foundation simply doesn't make itself available to outsiders. If Harry had ever gotten to the inside to see that culture, it would have betrayed the us against them integrity of the White Court and invalidated the whole setup. So when Subterranean Press came to me with a proposal to produce a novelette illustrated by no less than Mike Mignola, I jumped at the chance. The challenge here was to present Thomas from his own viewpoint, one distinct from Harry's. And even better, I wanted to pit brother against brother in such a way that their relationship of trust and mutual regard was maintained, but they still got to slug it out with one another. I also got to bring some of the other background material of the Dresden Files story world into play. The Oblivion War was something I really loved conceptually, but like the White Court, its very nature prevented Dresden from getting involved without causing the entire thing to implode. This was an ideal place for that piece of universe background, and it made me feel all warm and fuzzy to finally get it out where the readers could see it too. Awesome. Yeah, so this is the one where, Thomas, we're in his perspective, and he is getting a call from Lara saying, hey, there's basically what it amounts to is that Harry has gotten contacted by the Stygian Sisterhood, which is this group of
witches that, correct me if I'm wrong, instead of taking body parts from others and attaching it to themselves, they take the
pieces of
intellect,
mind.
the mind from demons and from whatever else, and attach it to themselves.
Yeah, they magically like stitch it onto their own consciousness.
Which is, like, you think of Stygian, like, what's that word? Vestigious? Vestigious? Is that a word?
I think it is, but I don't know off the top of my head what it means.
Okay. Because that's what I thought of when I heard Stygius. I was like, I'm going to look it up really quick.
Okay.
Vestigial, forming a very small remnant of something that was once much larger and noticeable. So that's...
Oh, say it again?
Biology. It says forming a very small remnant of something that was once much larger or more noticeable. Like he felt a vestigial flicker of anger from last night. So I guess that's not what I...
No, well,
that
that could work, because if it's taking a piece of something from a larger thing and stitching it onto you, that could kind of work with vestigial, I think.
Yeah, because I just thought of a word when I heard stygial. I was like, I wonder if that's part of anything.
Yeah, it's got to be connected. But yeah, so we see the Stygian Sisterhood contact Harry and say like, hey, my son or whatever is missing, and this cult took him, and their plan is to get Harry to go to this warehouse where they're going to see the kid on the altar with a book next to him that is like the book of, I forget what it's called. It's in my notes here somewhere. But Lexicon Malos.
Ooh,
and
sounds evil.
Basically what they're trying to do is to get people to realize or to remember these demon goddesses, to bring them back into reality, because Thomas's whole mission with his sister is the White Court is a part of the Oblivion War, which is this thing where the Volteri, what are they called?
Yeah, this whole Oblivion War thing was so fascinating.
Yeah, the Venatorium Brorum. And basically what they're doing is they are all of the old gods, like all of the old ancient gods. The only way for them to exist in our reality is if people remember them. So the Venatorium Brorum, their whole job is to make it so that humanity doesn't remember these beings, because they're causing a ton of trouble.
Yeah.
And so she wants Harry to find this book, and they're hoping that he will give it to the council, which will then like publish the book
and make people remember, make people know who this person was. Yeah.
Because the council's hope is that by publishing the book, the rituals inside will become less and less effective. I think we see that in like Deadbeat or something. And there was some book that they published.
I think it was, or have we read Deadbeat? Can't remember where it is.
We've read. I feel
like it's like something with Kemmler or something.
Yeah, I think so too. But they published that to make the ritual, like if a ton of people are doing the ritual,
it gets muddled.
It gets muddled, like watered down and whatnot. So that's, but the sisterhood doesn't care about the rituals. They care about humanity, like seeing the names of these dead goddesses and people calling upon them. And so that's kind of like the situation that we're in here. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more in a minute. I actually have something pulled up on my phone about the Oblivion War when we get there. But I love this first line. Let's get something clear right up front. I'm not Harry Dresden. Harry's a wizard, a genuine, honest to goodness wizard. He's Gandalf on crack and an IV of Red Bull with a big leather coat and a 44 revolver in his pocket. He'll spit into the eye of gods and demons alike if he thinks it needs to be done, and to hell with the consequences. And yet somehow my little brother manages to remain a decent human being. I'll be damned if I know how, but then I'll be damned regardless. My name is Thomas Wraith, and I'm a monster. I'm like, dude, what an opening. Like,
For
what?
real.
Ooh,
For
like,
real.
I like that a lot. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on backup in general? I know we got a lot of notes here. Feel free to flip through them.
Yeah, no, lots of good notes for sure. Again, this was the first time that or at least that I remember hearing about the Oblivion War.
Same, yeah.
And the way that Thomas described it to Bob as they were talking, I think pretty sure it was Bob.
Yeah.
Was, basically fighting for the memory of the world, right?
Yeah.
That context was so like I had to like stop listening and just conceptually think about that for a while. Like
Yeah.
not even in context with the book.
Yeah.
Just think about that. Because it was like really just kind of a mind fuck, dude.
Yeah.
So that was super cool. And just seeing Thomas on his own is always awesome because we know that he does and did have, in fact, we see it several times where Thomas has to go off on his own and do stuff and we hear about later, right? And so it's just cool to be with him, and to have Bob and Thomas together was like
that
probably
was so cool.
my most like favorite duo ever. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just awesome. So yeah,
Dude.
no, this is a good one.
Yeah, that was so great when he like goes into Harry's apartment and he tells Mouse, he's like, I need to see the skull.
Yep.
And Mouse is like sniffing him and stuff. He's like, no, it's really me and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then when he goes down to Bob, he has to convince him
That's
that
right,
he's
because
there
he's
to
got
help.
the glamour on him. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then he's like, Bob's like, no, if you can't tell me what's going on, I'm not going to help you.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if I tell you, then it's going to be information that Harry has, which basically will defeat our whole mission. Like we need to keep the memory of these gods from mortals away. Like we don't want any mortal to have the memory of this stuff. And so once he told Bob that, Bob was like, okay, I won't tell Harry. And they could work together from there.
Yep.
And yeah, I loved the two of them just having a conversation. And but I loved Thomas's line where he's like trying to talk to Bob, but Bob isn't like waking up yet.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, if Harry was pulling my leg about Bob like not
he's
being
like, I'm
real,
gonna feel like a fucking idiot, dude.
He's like, dude, I would feel so fucking stupid. And he's like, my brother, the ventriloquist.
Yeah, for real.
But yeah, then so Thomas at one point goes back to his apartment and he sees Justine there. And she's there to like pass the information on from Lara. Yeah. So while he's at the apartment, he's like, Justine like hugs him and whatnot, and he is fighting off his demon.
Yes.
And this was something that was really cool that we see even from like the first page, is the demon is like a sentient thing inside him that is talking to him and trying to make decisions that Thomas has to fight off.
Yeah.
And like it has its own separate like thought or like I guess like brain or whatever. Like it's like Lashiel inside him, basically.
It's another person in his head telling him and his body and everything to do these things because it's just incessantly that's all it cares about. Dude, I couldn't imagine, and I think that's part of the reason why we love Thomas so much is because we realize, the amount of like inner
turmoil
to do the right thing and the amount of willpower it takes for him to say, no, I'm not going to be a monster is like I don't know if I have it.
Right. Oh yeah.
So it's,
just I would not do well as a white court vampire. That it takes some serious willpower. And I just loved seeing him fight off this demon. And we talked about it back in our blood rights episode, but I've had some issues in the past with like drugs and stuff, and like his whole inner turmoil reminds me a lot of like, you know, trying not to use drugs when
Yeah.
you're in the thick of it, and like what
Yep.
you go through during that time. And so it was really cool to see him like actively fight off this thing that just wants like pleasure, pleasure, pleasure,
Yep.
pleasure, just like over and over.
Yep.
And even so, even when he sees Justine, it's still telling him,
And it's even stronger. Take her,
yeah,
take her, take
yeah,
her. Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure.
it's like our little doe, and like says
Yeah.
all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And he has to like step back from her and like close his eyes and just kind of breathe.
Yep.
And she has this great line where she says, "It doesn't make you a monster to want. It's what you do with the want that matters."
That's right.
And yeah, this is something that we saw back in Turncoat. It's what Harry was saying to Molly. She's like, "Oh, I keep having all these like violent thoughts about, you know, wanting to hurt God, what's his name? Morgan."
Yeah.
She has all these like violent thoughts about like wanting to hurt Morgan. And Harry's like, you know, having those thoughts. She's like, "What kind of monster would have those thoughts? Like, I shouldn't have those thoughts about wanting to do these things to him." And he's like, "Having those thoughts doesn't make you a monster. It's the choices you make."
That's right. It's acting on them that
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's another like big theme of the Dresden Files. It's like you're not inherently a monster. You
That's right.
just need to make decisions
It's
that,
choices.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was also surprised to see that Thomas is able to use a little bit of magic. He's able to he was able to learn a tracking spell, and he was able to use it to kind of track down his brother. And it's not something I expected to see, because I had no reason to think that he had any sort of magic
Yeah.
besides what is like inherent to him. And Thomas even says, he's like, Harry waxes poetic about like magic being very emotional, and like it's a deep-seated part of you, and you're like born with it and this stuff. And Thomas is like, "I'm gonna be real with you, I have a different perspective." He's
Yeah.
like, it's a skill that you can learn.
That's
like,
right. And anybody can learn it. He
Yeah.
says, he's like, you can learn how to do this.
Yeah, he's like, anybody can learn it. He's like, you may not be like as powerful as Harry or whatever,
Yeah.
but you can learn magic. And so I thought that was an interesting perspective, because
Yeah.
we're in Harry's head all the time, where he is, you know, very aware of the magic around him.
Yep.
And there's been times where he's touched somebody and they've had like a very strong aura, and there's been times where they've had like a little tiny aura. But I think in Harry's head, he's always like, no, you're born with the talent, and then you grow it.
Yeah.
So I was surprised to see Thomas say, "Oh no, I learned it like a skill, like anything
That's
else."
right. Like anybody can. You just
Yeah.
have to know what to look for.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Okay, so while Thomas is talking to Bob, we learn about the Stygian Sisterhood, which we already talked about, but we also learn about the Prosthano Society. And Bob says that these are lunatics from the Baltic region who lop off like arms and other body parts and stitch them, like replace them with pieces from like ghouls and demons, and like presumably like vampires and stuff. And so he calls it patchwork immortality. And this is something that we have not seen in the series yet, like at least not like in person. And so I'm really eager to see them show up later. Like hopefully they show up in a later book where you know, we see Dresden fighting them, and he's like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
Like that would be so cool. So
and then you'd have to ask Thomas, what was that? Oh, I can't really tell you because I'm trying not to.
Well, I think I think Thomas could tell him about
Yeah,
them,
this,
because
yeah,
I think I don't know if he'd be able to tell him about the Stygian sisterhood, but I think
yeah.
the Prostano Society, I don't think he said that they are the
They're
ones
part
trying to
of.
bring evil
Okay,
gods back.
gotcha.
I think they're just kind of lunatics
Yeah,
that are like, it's almost
crazy
like,
power seekers.
yeah, it's almost like cyberpunk. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
magical equivalent of cyberpunk, where they're
Gotcha.
putting like just random bits and pieces of demon bodies on themselves. It's such an interesting idea.
That is interesting. Yeah.
But then the big action scene happens when he understands what he's going to do, and he stands on this altar pretending to be this like cult leader or something, like about to sacrifice the child. And that's when Harry kind of storms in and hits him with a bolt of force, and like he goes flying, and Harry like takes the kid, and the Stygian sister runs after Thomas, like completely bails on Harry, and she's posing as the person that is like hiring Harry to get this kid back. So Harry takes this kid and gets him out of there, and then realizes that this lady wasn't his mom. And when he
Yeah.
tries to take the kid back to the actual parents, they're like, "You kidnapped our son?" He's like,
Mm.
"No, I saved your son." They're like, "What the fuck are you talking
Yeah.
about?"
Yeah.
And he tries to get them to pay him for returning their son, and they're like, "Get the fuck out of here before
Yeah.
we call the cops." And so Harry is just so confused, and he's just having the worst day ever. Meanwhile, Thomas, running from the Stygian sister, he finally loses her and then tracks her down to where she went. I think she went to like a hotel room or something like that. And he comes in, and like the whole book he's been fighting off his demon, and the demon's been like, "You need to like take this girl and like take her energy and all this stuff."
Yep.
And the Stygian sister, he's finally able to do that. He's able to use his demon to kill a bad guy. And it makes me wonder, I'm like, dude, how many times has he done that, where he's tracked down like a bad guy, almost like, Dexter, the serial
Yeah.
killer. Like he Dexter has these urges to kill
Yep.
people, and he uses that to kill bad guys.
For
I'm
real.
like, dude,
Just let
Thomas
just
could do the
took
same
yeah,
thing.
let his demon go wild, said, "Here,
Yeah,
this is a bad person. Take him."
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so he essentially fucks the Stygian.
Fucks the life
Yeah,
out of.
fucks the life out of her, fucks her to death.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of where Thomas ends up. And then I loved yeah, Harry just kind of relaying his version of events to
Yeah.
Thomas at the end, like, yeah, there was this cult leader that ran off, and I grabbed the kid, but the lady like completely stiffed me and ran off, and like didn't end up paying me or anything. And
Yeah.
then the kid's parents are all mad, and I love that.
Yeah.
But before we move on to the next one, I wanted to read you what somebody wrote on the Reddit, because I asked them, I'm like, so what is the Oblivion War? Like
Yeah.
I've reread this series so many times, and I don't think I fully understand what that is. Like,
Yeah.
is it what we see, without giving too much away? Is it what we see in Battleground, or is it what we see in like the stuff that happens after
Mm.
Ghost Story with like the Outsiders and
Yeah.
whatnot? I'm like, is it that stuff, or is it something else? And this guy had a great answer. His name is Kip Ingram, and he says, Jim has said that the Oblivion War likely won't show up in the main series because Harry doesn't know about it. That's a shame because it's such a cool idea. There have been very, very powerful beings in the back history of the Dresden verse. You're right that this is not about outsiders. The Oblivion War is about exiling these powerful beings from reality. They belonged here as much as we do, but caused too much trouble to tolerate. They've been imprisoned, but not gone. Any one of them could stir up major trouble at any time if they got loose. There's one way out of that. Their power arises from mortal belief in them, and and in fact, their access to our reality completely depends on someone here knowing about them.
Oh,
The Oblivion War the Oblivion War is an attempt to eradicate all living knowledge of these beings, at which time they're gone for good. The archive is a major weapon in this war. In fact, it's her real primary purpose. If any information about these beings is written down, she knows about it and dispatches a cell like Lara and Thomas to go see to its destruction. She herself retains knowledge about these beings until her power shows her that they are otherwise entirely forgotten. Then she deletes her own knowledge of that particular being and its curtains for that being permanently. That's the broad strokes.
Holy shit, dude.
And I'm like, dude, that is so cool.
How does that person even know that? He's got to be so intuitive, dude.
Yeah, that and a lot of the people on the Reddit, me included, watch all of Jim Butcher's interviews.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he talks about a lot of these
For
kind
sure.
of things that are
No,
outside of the normal
that's
series.
really cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, and so I'm hoping that Jim finds a way to get it introduced. He said in the little note he had here that, you know, it was almost impossible to introduce the Oblivion War because of what it is. Like Harry would have to
know about it.
Yeah, like and if Harry knew about it, he would then have to die in order for that being to be completely forgotten. Like even if Harry was the last person to remember who this god or whatever being, like he would have to die, or like have Molly maybe like wipe his memory or something to be able to forget about it and for the being to actually die. And so I can see why it's such a hard thing to introduce, right? Because it's like, how do you write around that? So
totally.
All right, so next up we have The Warrior. This is a novelette from Mean Streets, and it takes place between Small Favor and Turncoat and before Last Call. Jim says, once upon a time when moving... Oh, dude, this is my favorite note. Dude, I'm ready. I love this so much.
Let's hear it.
Okay, I have so much to say about this note. Jim says, once upon a time when moving into a new neighborhood, I spent a few days meeting the new neighbors. Nothing big, just visits to say hello, introduce myself to the other family with children my son's age, another family with a high school age daughter who often babysat for the other families on the street, the usual sort of thing. I had a bunch of innocuous interactions with them that didn't look like anything special at the time. Fast forward 5 years, over the next few years, I came to learn that some of the most inane, unimportant little things I had done or said in that time had impacted several of my neighbors in enormous ways. Not necessarily good or bad, but significantly and generally in a positive fashion, or so it seemed to me. If I'd chosen different words to speak or timed my actions only slightly differently, it might well have altered their lives, and if I hadn't been paying close attention, I might not have realized it happened at all. It was my first real life lesson in the law of unintended consequences and the basis of my belief that big, important things are built from small and commonplace things, and that even our little acts of petty, everyday good or evil have a cumulative effect on our world. A lot of religions make a distinction between light and darkness and paint portraits of dramatic battles between their champions. But maybe the fight on the ground is a lot more common than we ever really think. It happens every day, and a lot of the time we might not even be aware that it's going on until 5 years later, I guess. Our smallest actions and choices matter. They tell us about who we are. That was the idea I tried to carry into The Warrior. That and the idea that what seems like a good thing or a bad thing might not be either, seen from another point of view. Many readers were upset with Michael's fate at the end of Small Favor. How horrible that a character who is basically so decent got handed such a horrible fate, being shot and crippled for life by the champions of hell itself. What a tragedy that he couldn't continue the fight. Judge for yourself how tragic it was for him. And dude, I literally listened to that note like in the audiobook. I listened to it like over and over, like at least like 3 times, because I I love I love this idea, and I believe in it so much that the little things you do day to day can completely change like how somebody sees you or how they see life or whatever. And I've had times where somebody's like tiniest word of encouragement or something just like completely changed my outlook on a particular thing, or just one person being like kind in a moment, or me being kind in a moment, led to some like bigger friendship or whatever.
Yeah.
And even thinking back to like how you and I met, like I just like I took you on a ride in my car and we just like hung out for a day. Because I was like, oh yeah, I'll just take him to like go to the mall or whatever. And then we ended up hanging out and talking a lot more, and then we became the friends we are today.
Yep.
And you think about those just like little actions, and then even looking back on your life, certain relationships that you're in, like if you had never like if you had lived on the other side of like the peninsula or something and never gone to Red Apple as a daily part of your shopping and whatnot, you would have never met your fiance.
Yeah.
And so it's like, man, just like the little things like that, they all add up. And I love that Jim Butcher, like, I guess recognizes that and then wrote a whole story about it. I love the Warrior so much.
Me too.
Yeah. So just a quick description of it. This is the one where Harry is getting sent pictures of the Carpenter family, and he believes that they're in danger. And Michael has already been crippled by this point, and he's kind of just going about normal life without the swords. Harry has both of the swords, and he convinces Michael to allow him to protect the Carpenter family and to kind of watch out for them and to track down the guy that's doing it. And through a bunch of twists and turns, he finds out that this guy is after the swords because he is not happy that they're not being put to use. And so yeah, that's kind of the bird's eye view of this story. What did you think of this one?
Man, you just knocked it out of the park. You said everything I feel like I would have needed to say, but yeah, taking a character such as Michael, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is just, like we've said before, just kind of this epitome of kindness and peace and understanding, and having something happen to him that makes him angry.
Yeah.
And we know that if Michael's angry, there is something bad is going on, right?
Right.
Like this is a man that does not get angry.
Right.
He does not get upset. And so I think for me, a lot of the stuff that really made me feel was seeing Michael in a place where he, may have not had the power to do what he wanted to do, per se.
Yeah.
And so yeah, seeing Harry be there for Michael and watching them figure it out was super awesome. And again, the first thing you said was on point too.
Like you said, there's not a lot that gets Michael angry, but when it comes to his family, and we even see earlier in the story, Harry is trying to convince him to like join him in this fight, and Michael's like, if I die, I die. Like I'm confident in where I'm going. And Harry's like, oh, so you're just gonna leave your family without a father and husband.
And he says, well, other families have, like,
yeah. And then Harry like keeps going with that, and Michael's like, okay. And kind of relinquishes to, allowing Harry to like defend them and to kind of figure this whole thing out. And yeah, and so then later, we see that grow into, Alicia being captured and him like actually getting furious. And I have a whole note about that later on, but yeah, I think, the other thing I liked about this is the talk with Uriel at the end.
Yes.
And, he kind of shows Harry how all his little choices throughout the book like added up into like these big things down the road.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to like Jim's note from the little prologue thing. So one of those little actions being that Harry saved a little girl, Courtney, from getting hit by an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And she's got like a bruise. And the mom comes out and is like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Just trying to keep your little girl from becoming a victim of the green movement."
Yep.
And this is one of my favorite jokes from the Dresden Files, because I think it goes over so many people's heads. And the first time I read it,
I didn't get the joke.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The first time I read it, I thought it was so fucking clever. I'm like, that might be like one of the smartest jokes in the Dresden Files.
Yeah, it went over my head. I wasn't sure. I don't know what the green movement is.
Okay, so the green movement is basically like electric vehicles, like wanting to like maintain maintain our atmosphere and take care of the
keep
earth
the
and whatnot
to a point,
Yeah. And around the time that this short story came out, it was around the time where people were kind of rolling their eyes at like climate change and like all of the very like hippie save the earth kind of people. And that's the kind of person that like Harry is. And so Harry's like the car that ran her over is an electric vehicle and it was moving. And he says, "I'm trying to save your daughter from the green movement." And so like the moving car, the green movement, because it's an electric vehicle.
Yep.
And yeah, dude, that joke fucking cracks me up every single time. I love it. I love it so much. Okay, so then when Harry goes inside the carpenter's place, Michael mentions for the first time up to this point, I think, that his house is protected by faith, but doesn't elaborate. And we find out more about this in Skin Game. We find out what exactly is protecting his house. But this is the first time where he's like, "No, I am like, my house is supernaturally protected."
Yeah.
And so I thought that was kind of cool that we get the first mention of that. Yeah. So then Harry ends up staying at the Carpenters. They open a room for him, like a guest bedroom, and he goes in there and it's Charity's sewing room, and it's got like all these like bright and soft colors, and it's really well lit. And he realizes that this must have been Charity's safe haven when Michael was away.
Yeah.
And that she probably went in there, as her place of peace when Michael was like she knew her husband was on the front line.
That's right. In
probably
danger.
in dangerous situations and whatnot. And I thought this was the coolest quote. It's probably it might be my favorite quote from Side Jobs. And it's, how many times had she wondered if it would be a solemn Father Forthill coming to the door instead of the man she loved? How many hours had she sat in this well-lit room making warm, soft things for her family while her husband carried Amarachius's cold, hard steel into the darkness? Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a good quote.
That's a chill factor right there, dude.
Ooh, because like you can see it, you can see the movie in your head, right? Like you can see like, having one scene with Charity like in her sewing room.
Oh,
like
totally.
like maybe crying, and she's like sewing this thing together, and
Yep.
she's praying or whatever, and then it fades over to Michael. You see him like walking down a dark alley with his
With
Amarachius.
Amarachius, dude.
Ooh,
Yeah,
just like,
totally.
and then like at the end of the alley, like a demon just like crawls out, and then it goes back and forth between them, like her sewing and him like fighting a demon.
Ugh, jeez.
That'd be so sick.
You should be the frickin'
Director.
You should be the screenplay writer of
Yeah.
this movie that needs to happen. That's always needed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea, and I love how this quote just kind of like brings that to mind, because like the sentences are framed in a way where it's back to back.
Yeah.
Her in the room making soft things for her family while Michael carries Amarachius. And I love the way he wrote this. So then he runs into Kelly at the what were they playing? Soccer, baseball? Like
Soccer.
Soccer. Okay.
Yep.
And he tells her about she's sitting there because she thinks that she's screwing everything up. She's making the team.
Okay. This is the little girl, right? That was she was crying behind the stands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Harry sees her and goes back. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And he sits down with her, and he's like, did they make you read Great Expectations in school by Dickens? And he tells her about the widow. I forget the widow's name, but he tells her about the widow from that story where she basically, her husband died and she sat inside watching the rest of the world from her living room and refused to leave and just kind of watched the world go by. And he's like, she missed out on so many things because she wasn't willing to go have new adventures or to try. Even though something failed, you still need to try because the next thing might not fail.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you don't do anything, then nothing is ever going to happen, which I think is a good lesson for anybody. I've definitely had times where I'm like, well, I'm just not really on the dating scene right now, having gone through, a lot of like tries and failures or breakups or whatever, or, someone turning me down or whatever. And it's like, I don't know why I keep bringing this back to dating. It's just the most relevant thing to me, I guess. But it's like, no, you have to still keep trying, because then if you don't go and like try to date, if you don't go and like ask people out, then you'll never get anywhere. Then you'll never get married or whatever your goal is.
That's right.
And
the argument is it's the one time that you decide to not put yourself out there could be the time that solves everything.
Right. Yes.
That's it.
That's so true. And so I love I love Kelly. She's like dear God, you just made Dickens relevant to my life.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. And you don't really think about that when they make you read all those kind of books in school. And
did you read Dickens?
I don't think I read Dickens specifically.
We never had to,
but
I
read like Tom Sawyer and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, a lot of older books, or like To Kill a Mockingbird.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yep. I like To Kill a Mockingbird.
I did
though.
too.
I actually enjoyed that.
Giraffe?
No, I haven't.
It's another really good one. It's not so much a school age book, but it's by the same author, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, interesting.
And Lord forgive me if it's not. I'll get eaten alive. I'll get eaten alive. Anyways.
Okay, yeah, I'll check that one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never read Dickens, but I think, those books, I really don't know if school is doing the kids any favors by having them read those books at such an early age, because
I don't think, dude, from what I understand, I don't think they do that anymore.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that I think nowadays it's stuff that was made in this day and age for exactly to be set in a middle school.
Okay. That's good, because I know, like, I came away from those stories, like To Kill a Mockingbird, like I came away from that liking the story, but not coming away with any like life lessons or anything.
Totally. Yeah. It just goes written so long ago. And now it'd be like 100 and, a
Yeah.
100 years ago, right? Like,
Yeah, something like that.
yeah.
And yeah, so I think, hopefully, yeah, they're giving the kids more modern stuff that's more relevant. But like Harry says, he's able to take this situation from great expectations
Yep.
and turn it into something that's relevant to her life. And so I really like that scene. That was really touching. Anytime Harry is making a kid feel better.
Yeah. And another thing that popped out at me during this was that, and I can't remember exactly what was saying or what the situation was, but she was talking about how she couldn't ever get the goal or could never do anything right. And Harry in his monologue was like, man, if only the times were such where that's what I was worrying about.
Oh yeah,
and it was just like, it was refreshing to see like, a child's perspective on life, because I remember being just like that.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
if I can't do this, I'm not worth it. Or if I can't do this, then I'm not good to anybody.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's to us now, it's kind of a joke. It's like, you're gonna be just fine.
Right.
You're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
But it's always refreshing to see.
It's so real to the kid.
So real. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's it. It is all, that is it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. It's that. And we think about that as like, man, there's so much more.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just there's a sense of innocence with that is like very profound.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast this morning. It's one of my favorite podcasts. It's called Popcorn Culture. I recommend everyone go watch them. They're two brothers that just kind of talk about life, and they're very funny. But one of the brothers, he's got a son, and he was saying that when he was a kid, he had like this lunchbox, like this metal lunchbox that he really liked, and he kept all this stuff in it that wasn't his lunch. It was all his like toys and stuff.
Yep. Pokemon cards.
Pokemon cards. Yeah. And he had it like in the driveway or something, and there was a car or like a truck or something that ran over it. And he was so upset. He was like probably like 6 or 7 or something. He's just like crying and so upset that his thing just got crunched. And he says, I have to remember with my son that, or he's like, nowadays I would look at that and be like, it's just a lunchbox. I'll just buy a new lunchbox or whatever. He's like, I have to remind myself with my son now that to them, that is a very real thing that just happened. And that is a very like devastating thing that just happened. And like, even though the situation may be like completely like mundane, it's like, oh, we'll just get you a new box.
Right. But you
like,
understand how you felt when it happened to you. Yeah. And it had gravity to it.
Yeah. The emotions are very real. I thought that was kind of interesting. That's kind of what Harry's doing here.
That is cool. Yeah.
So let's jump ahead a little bit. We'll wrap this one up. Father Forthill explains what the order is.
Finally explains after much hounding by Michael. Michael had to go in there and say, listen,
you're gonna tell me.
Daughter is gone.
Yeah.
They took my daughter. You better tell me right this second. And that was also kind of cool.
Yeah.
Of course, seeing Michael in that situation, but also like Father Forthill bending to Michael just because of everything that he's done. Right.
Yeah.
Like he's done so much for the church and for God. It's like,
I
can't say no to you. Like your daughter's gone. I will help. And
Forthill's even like saying to himself, he's like, sometimes it's so hard to know what the right thing to do is, because like he has these rules, but sometimes the right thing isn't necessarily following the rules, right?
Yep.
And so he kind of has his own moment where he's like,
it's so hard how to tell what the right thing is sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So then we jump forward and they track down the guy Rourke, and I love this quote from Michael, and I really wish I had clipped the audio from it.
Oh yeah, the audio is so good in this book.
But oh god, it's so good.
So good.
Michael, he's like fighting him, and he's like, slow, too slow. You don't know the first thing about what it means to wield a sword.
Yeah.
It means sacrifice. It means forgetting about yourself and what you want. means putting your faith in the Lord God Almighty. And he's just like battering this guy.
Oh,
like,
guy's getting shit
oh
on,
my
dude.
God. This is paraphrased, but Rourke says, "You've been lied to. Why would the Lord abandon his people in their time of need?" And Michael says, "You arrogant child, that is not for us to know. We are only men. We see only one place at one time. The Lord knows all that might be. You presume to know more than our God what should be done with the swords? Does God want you to abduct innocent children and kill innocent men? Look at the bruises on my daughter's arms. Look at the blood on my friend's face, and you tell me who has been deceived." Woo!
Dude.
Let's go.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. And he's
I'm gonna
doing
re-listen
this
to that before bed, dude.
Oh, right? It's so
Like, I need
epic.
to hear that again.
Like it is just like the fury of God channeling through Michael.
Exactly.
It's so good. And he's just like beating the shit out of Rourke the whole time this is going on. And then he turns to, like, Harry tries to stop him, and he's like, "He hurt my little girl, Harry." And then this is the best Dresden moment. Like,
Absolutely.
I just there's one thing in this sentence that I like zeroed in on, and Harry says, "And he can't now. He's down. If this is how it has to be, I'll do it, but you can't."
That's right.
And I love that Harry doesn't want to kill anybody either.
But he's also willing to say, "Michael, if this needs to happen, I can't let you poison yourself. I'll do it."
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
oh my God. It's so fucking like, ooh, I love that about him so much. He's like, "I will take that on myself. Like if
I will pay for this sin. You cannot.
Right.
I will go to hell, man. Michael. You can't."
Yes, exactly.
That's what he's saying, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Oh, it's so good. I just I love how much Harry cares about Michael and how he sees the whole picture here.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of when it was in Changes when Harry is storming in. They're in Edinburgh, and Ariana is on the stage talking to all the wizards.
Yep.
And he's like going through the common room, and he's got like Molly dragging alongside him.
Yeah, just holding on to his arm.
Yeah, and he's like gearing up for a fight, like getting ready to go in. And she's like, "Harry, you can't do this. Like, if this is how it has to be, let me go in. Like, I'll veil us, and I'll like,
that's right. I will take the brunt of this.
Yeah, like I'll do a distraction or something, but you can't just storm in there." And it's just so, like, all of these characters sacrifice themselves for each other so much, and I just absolutely love that.
Oh, it's incredible.
I'll burn through these last couple notes. Harry sees Uriel again as Jake. He allows Harry to ask questions.
Uriel says, "I don't really do this often, but go ahead, ask. I'll answer."
Right. Yeah.
And you're just like, "Damn, dude.
That's cool."
Yeah, that's cool.
And Harry's like, like, why does God allow this kind of stuff to happen? And Uriel says, "God wants you to have a good life and for good things to happen to you, but he won't gift wrap them for you. You have to make the choices that lead to those things." And it reminded me of the talk that Dresden had with Kelly under the bleachers. Like, you have to make the choice to go back out and try again and redo that. And then it also reminded me of the talk that Harry had with Faith at the very beginning, where he's like, you can let darkness like cloud your sight and just
when that little bit of light comes, you might miss it.
Yeah, you'll miss it.
Yeah.
And so it seems like there's a kind of theme working through a lot of these, a lot of like choices and whatnot. And goes for good things to happen to you, but he won't gift wrap them to you. You have to make the choice to lead to those things. And then Jake confirms, or Uriel confirms, that if Harry had gone up first in the helicopter, he would have died there and Michael would have died on the island.
That's right. Yep.
And so the outcome that happened is pretty much the best.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was kind of interesting because I always wondered that too. I'm like, what if Harry had gone up? Would he have like been able to like lift a shield and like shroud himself? But Uriel's like, no, you would have died.
Yeah.
And then one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that Harry stopped Chuck the electrician from like he was like drinking on the job.
He was drunk as shit, and he went to work on this power box. But Harry, before he even got there, canceled out the power for the whole block.
Right? Yeah, he was like
Hexus like that shit, dude.
Hexus that shit. But then Uriel tells Harry that because of Harry's small actions, he helped Courtney's mom, the girl with the soccer ball, realize that her daughter was being abused by the dad, and it stopped her mom from a lifetime of alcohol abuse, and it stopped a generational cycle of abuse of over 300 years in the making. Chuck the electrician, Harry saved his life that day. And in a few years, he would be able to donate his kidney to his daughter who had some sort of problem with her kidney. Yeah. And the family will be stronger and happier than they've ever been, and he will have presumably like quit drinking and stuff. And so I thought that was really cool. And then the 5 minutes of kindness that Harry shared with Kelly will push her forward to become a counselor helping thousands. And then Uriel says, because Harry had said, like, Michael isn't a warrior anymore. Like, he can't walk, he can't fight. And Uriel's like, do you think that warriors only fight in battle? Like, do you think that's what we need from you to like physically fight on our behalf? And so he says all these things. He mentions Courtney and Courtney's mom and the family, and he talks about Chuck and the alcohol, and then Courtney and her going on to become a counselor. And he says, do you think you have not struck a blow for the light, warrior? And it's so cool because none of that shit had anything to do with Harry fighting a physical battle. And I love that quote so fucking much. But yeah, this was just a fantastic book, dude, or a fantastic story. Like I teared up multiple times. And Uriel also mentions that Michael was a hairbreadth away from murdering the priest, and presumably falling from grace himself.
Just
or
dude.
like even misusing Amarachius, like because he had
the sword. Exactly, he was using it to defend himself.
Yeah, he had it in his other hand. It's like, dude, what if he had pulled that thing and like killed the priest? He could have shattered the sword. So yeah, so then he says like Harry saved Michael from losing himself. And it's like just all these little actions. And yeah, I don't know. I love this one. I love this one so much.
Good. And it's there's just so much that is like so profound with this entire story, dude. The whole entire thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. It's the one that made me feel the most, for sure.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So let's skip Last Call. I'll talk because I think it's a. Do you have anything to say about Last Call? It's the one that I have the least to say about.
Yeah, no. Other than it was just kind of a cool story about, it was just one of those like offshoots, right? Like nothing really important happened.
Yeah.
It was kind of a cool story. So no, there's not a lot to say.
Yeah. The only thing I have to say about it is Murphy when she was all messed up.
Yeah.
She admits she's like, yeah, I've wanted him for the longest time.
Right,
him and his rod.
Yep, him and his rod. Oh, Harry, you got your rod.
Yeah. Did you bring your rod, Harry? And then the other quote I really liked is Murphy says, "Who made the evil beer?" And then Dresden says, "The beer isn't evil, it's a victim."
It's a victim. That's right. Yeah. That's right. You can't call Max Ale a freaking evil ale, beer, dude.
Yeah. No way. And then, just for continuity, I'll say, it takes place between Small Favor and Turncoat. And what Jim says about it is Having already written a Mead-themed short story, I wasn't quite sure what to do with this one, but hey, it was Pat Elrod asking me, and I've never been good at saying no, and I decided to tread upon what is very nearly holy ground. In the Dresden Files, the forces of darkness were going to violate Max Beer.
That's right. Yeah.
Naturally, Harry gets to respond just as many readers would. Oh, snap. This was a fairly lighthearted piece for me anyway, and I tried to carry the same sense of energy and pace through the story that you get from the really good Monster of the Week episodes of the X-Files. I'll have to make it up to Max sometime. So then we get Love Hurts, our second to last one. And this is from Songs of Love and Death, edited by George R.R. Martin and Gardner Dozois. It takes place between Turncoat and Changes. Gardner Dozois has a bunch of awards for his anthologies because he's good at them. And I leapt at his invitation to contribute to the anthology he was working on with George R.R. Martin, originally titled Star-Crossed Lovers. Despite my enthusiasm, finding a starting point for a Dresden story was sort of a puzzler for me, since Harry Dresden might be in the top 3 star influence free lovers in the whole contemporary fantasy genre. How was I going to bring him into a story with a theme like that? Answer: get him into the thick of things next to Murphy when seemingly random love spells are running amok through the city. After that, all I had to do was apply his usual streak of luck and cackle madly to myself while typing. The title of the anthology changed to Songs of Love and Death after I'd written the story, which is probably a good thing. Otherwise, I may have tried to find a way to fit a death metal battle of the bands into the margins somewhere. No one deserves that. So yeah, Love Hurts is the one where, we get Murphy and Dresden at the beginning, and they're looking at like a crime scene, and they find out that these two people that are dead and were having sex are brother and sister, and Dresden figures that there must have been some sort of spell put on them, and so they kind of track the spell down to this carnival and are looking around there for like dark magic, and they end up going into the Tunnel of Terror.
Okay.
And they put the belt on, and Murphy falls in, they kind of fall in love with each other, and then they realize that it's a spell and that they got whammied, and then they fight the they fight the Red Court lady who is putting it all together. So they go to this carnival, and they're kind of looking around to, I forget how they got to the carnival. Somehow they tracked the evidence down to there.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, Murphy grabs his hand, and he grabs hers, and she's like, why have we never gotten together? This is I can't believe that we haven't ended up with each other after all this time. And Harry's like, well, do you want to? And she's like, I kind of do. And so then they have a whole makeout session.
Yeah.
And Harry's like, wait, we got to work right now, but after this,
that's right.
Do you want to go do something? And she's like, let's go back to my place and we can order in. And he's like, okay. And you kind of get this short story of what it would be like if they were together, because they're just walking around the carnival they're on a date.
Just they're dating. Yeah.
And so I remember when I read this back in the day, I'm like, Jim Butcher better fucking have them end up together, because I want this.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't have too many notes on it. I mean, they find a Red Court vampire at the end who is kind of behind it all. And basically she had rigged this belt on the ride, on the ride to make people fall in love with each other when they put it on. And she basically said that she does it because for the White Court, love is an anathema. And so if she can make more people fall in love, then it's less people that the White Court can get their hands on.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
And she's like, it weakens the White Court. But also, people falling in love is, more sex and more babies, and therefore more human race for the Red Court to feed on. And so I thought that was kind of a cool cool idea that, this red court vampire is playing Cupid because it literally feeds their society. So yeah, that one point Murphy says, why didn't we do this a long time ago? We're so stupid. Are we so blind as to not see what's right there in front of us? And I'm like, yes, you are. Both of you are completely. And then yeah, when they realize that they have the whammy on them, Harry says, it just isn't fucked up enough to really be you and me. And because Murphy's like, we didn't get whammied. No, we didn't. And Harry's like, we are. You know how I know that? Because it's just not fucked up enough to really be the two of us. And Murphy's like, my God, we got whammied.
We got whammied.
Yep. Oh, and then the saddest part is they kiss each other one last time before the spell burns out, because they burned the belt from the ride to completely delete the spell. And as he's doing it, like, he turns back to Murphy and like kisses her one last time, and then when it burns up, they both pull away because she remembers that she's like dating Kincaid, and he remembers that they wouldn't work out. So all right, we got one more. We got Aftermath. And this is by far the shortest note. This is a original novella made for this omnibus, and it takes place an hour or two after the end of Changes. And the note from Jim is, to quote a great man, "Nuff said."
Wow.
And this one was tough to get through, because we're seeing Murphy's point of view only like an hour or two after Dresden gets shot, and we're kind of seeing her like deal with everything that's taking place, and she's not on the police force or anything anymore because of the events of Changes. She's fired, and so as she's kind of dealing with all that, she gets in touch with Billy, and he's like, hey, Georgia is missing, I can't find her. And then he reveals that Georgia is pregnant, and that they need to track her down. And then kind of, they do a bunch of investigating, and they find out at the end that she was taken by the Fomor, who, and I think this might be the first time that we really see the Fomor.
Yeah.
And they're basically rounding up all these supernatural entities to experiment on. And I think the Fomor are kind of how, matter of fact, they may even be the society that Thomas was talking about earlier, the Phantasm Society, or Prosthanos Society. That might be the Fomor.
Would not surprise me.
Because that's what the Fomor do. They take pieces from supernatural creatures and use it in their own experiments. So I wonder if that's how that's connected.
They make humans with gills and stuff.
Yeah.
Some weird shit.
But yeah, so Murphy goes in and saves Georgia with Billy. What are your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so like understanding that all is happening again hours after, Karen's first time really admitted, like, okay, yes, take me out on a date.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
After all this time.
Yeah.
All this time was, just shitty to think about. But it was also kind of like, for her, it was a distraction with Georgia and Billy and all them that like kind of became a part of this little thing. It was like maybe her one, night worth of distraction before she's going to have to face what's going on.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah. So another good one, sad to think about. And only because I just know, what is to come, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, there was so much building up to Harry and Murphy actually going on a date. It's like they're about to do it.
Yes.
And something happens, and she shows up looking all pretty, like she mentions that she's got like makeup on and like a cute red blouse, and you know, butt hugging slacks and
That's right.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
all like she's like I was wearing like nice shoes and she's in the middle of a murder scene.
Yeah.
And it's just like, God damn it, can anything go right just one fucking time? And, you know, like you said, knowing what's to come, it makes it so much more difficult. And especially like, you know, we see, not to give too much away, but we see her in Ghost Story, and then we see her in the subsequent books, and
Yeah.
she's not super trusting. She's
No.
she's not herself.
Yeah.
And this book really shows us how she gets there. Like, we don't see all the in between stuff, but we do see her start to become much more hardened,
Yeah.
jaded, and just kind of like this is kind of where her trust issues. I mean, she's always had trust issues to some extent, but this is where,
well,
really,
think about it. The one time she let herself to give up a little bit of that trust,
yeah,
you know, Harry had been murdered.
right,
Like, dude, I can't even
yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
Can't even imagine.
She's like, the one time I let my guard down and this fucking happens.
Yep.
And yeah, it was just so brutal seeing her deal with it in the beginning. And she's trying to be like, well, we haven't found a body. Like, maybe, like, you know, and she's trying to like make excuses. And it's like, how many times has she been on the cop side where the family member or whatever is like, there's no body?
Same
like
thing. Yeah, you never found him. He's not dead.
Yeah, and now she's on the other side of it.
Ugh.
Where she's not a cop anymore, and the cops on the force are like, you need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And oh man, it's so brutal. But it was cool getting something from her POV. As the first thing and only thing we ever get from Murphy's POV, at least so far.
Yeah.
And then she's talking with the cops, and she explains the Martian grunt language.
Yes, that's right.
She's like,
that's right.
She's like, I grunted in a way that meant I acknowledge what you said. Please continue.
Oh yeah.
She has like a bunch of other ones. Like she's like,
well, the first one when she's in that apartment complex and the power trip guys, like, you know, she says something like, and he grunts, "Fuck you," and die.
Yeah.
You know, and then she says, oh, and then he actually said,
yeah. She's like, he made a grunt that meant fuck off and die.
Yeah.
And then he says something, and then he says, you could fuck off and die. Like,
exactly.
It was so good. It made me laugh out loud. But yeah, Georgia and Andy are missing, and I think it's funny. Billy, or not funny, but it's just cool. Like Billy comes to her because he said that Harry told him that if he ever wasn't around, that he could go to Murphy she would help him.
Yep.
She's like, he never said a damn thing about that to me.
That's right. Yeah.
And at this point, Billy doesn't know that Dresden is dead. Like he thinks that he's just off on a mission or something. And it's not until the very end of the story where Murphy tells him.
Yeah.
And then Billy, I liked this quote. Billy is talking about how more people would be afraid of Harry, or people would be a lot more afraid of Harry if they ever saw him in the fullness of his power. And Murphy agrees. And she says in her monologue, she's like, it wasn't the kind of fear that makes you scream and run. That's fairly mild as fear goes. Scooby-Doo fear. No, seeing Dresden in action filled you with the kind of fear that made you realize that you're a casualty of evolution, that you were watching something far larger and infinitely more dangerous than you yourself, and that your only chance of survival was to kill it immediately before you were crushed beneath a power greater than you would ever know.
Holy crap, dude.
Woo! That's another really good quote.
Yeah. That is.
Oh my god. My favorite part of that is It filled you, seeing Dresden in action filled you with the kind of fear that made you realize that you're a casualty of evolution.
Dude. Yeah,
Holy
what a
shit.
diss that is. Even to yourself.
Yeah.
Like just saying, yeah, he's so fucking powerful. We are just a casualty of him getting stronger.
Yeah.
Dang, dude. That's wild.
Oh my God. I thought it was
Yeah.
such a well-spoken quote.
Yeah.
And then yeah, Murphy taking down Ray, that was so satisfying. Just her like
Yep.
putting him in his place where he's talking all this shit to her. She's like, I'm gonna hurt you.
Finally, dude.
Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna hurt, like stop, I'm gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
And he just like keeps going, and she just wipes the fucking floor with him.
Yep.
And she even says like she got to a point where she was like on top of him and she kept asking him the question, and then she would like bash his head into the concrete.
Yeah.
And he like wouldn't answer, and she'd be like, I see you haven't learned your lesson.
That's right.
And bash his head in again,
dude.
And then he like answered, and she's like, oh, I've seen you learned your lesson. Like I just loved.
Could
I
you
love
imagine
how
getting pummeled? You know, because she even says he's like 6 foot something. You know, 250-pound bully.
Yeah.
Could you imagine to get your ass fucking handed to you by a 5 foot nothing, 115-pound woman, and just still being like, you know, like
trying to get up? And
yeah, dude. Like, no, you already got the second she knocked you down.
Yeah, you're fucked.
You win.
Yeah.
You win. You are better than I am.
Yeah.
There's no fucking way.
I also loved when Billy squares up to Marcone, and Marcone throws a knife at him like lightning fast.
Yeah.
And like
Marcone's a scary character, dude.
Dude, he is a scary character.
Yeah.
And I love this line he has where he's like, do not confuse yourself with Dresden. You do not have the power to threaten me. And it really puts into perspective how like we see Harry square up against Marcone and like talk back to him all the time.
It puts in perspective how the entirety of the outfit thinks of him.
Yeah.
Like, you know, not when he's there.
Right. Yeah. And Marcone is like, he allows Harry to talk to him the way he does because he knows that if he were to ever square up with Harry, like it would be a real fight.
That's right.
Like
there would be a lot of damage done.
Yeah.
Like,
and
one or the other may win, but you're gonna take this entire corporation out with it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And so seeing Marcone through Harry's eyes, which is the only POV we get, it's like the reader may be inclined to think like, oh, like Marcone can get pushed around, or he can get like, you know, someone can like stand up to him. And then we see like Billy like just start to like vaguely change.
Yeah.
And Marcone's like, no. And just like throws a knife at him.
No.
And he's like, just so you know, like you're not fucking Dresden.
Yeah.
Like
you're not
he's
even
like
close.
Yeah, you're not even close. And he's like, I only allow that shit from Dresden because he is who he is. That's the only reason I allow it.
Yeah.
Don't go thinking that you have anywhere near the same power skill as him.
Exactly.
And it puts it into perspective.
Dude, it does put it in perspective. Yeah.
Like, oh shit. Okay,
you're
so
like, wow.
Yeah. So we can't all just stand up to Marcone. Okay.
No. And it's funny because Harry does it so flippantly. Yeah. I don't think Harry. It's not even a thing to him.
Yeah.
But I don't think he understands like how deeply Marcone thinks about him.
Yeah.
You know, and like his shit. Because Harry's just like, well, fuck you. You know, you blah blah blah. Go die, and then walks away.
Yeah.
And Marcone is like nobody. You know what I mean? Like it's different. It's weird.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so good. Marcone, I've said this before, but Marcone is one of like the deepest and most complex characters in the series. I love him so much.
Yeah.
But he offers Murphy a job, and I think she should take it because, you know, same thing with well, I can't say that. Same thing with something we see later.
Yeah.
Is, you know, Marcone offering Murphy a job. It's like she wouldn't be able to move against Marcone, but she could work as someone taking out all of his competition and getting
all
rid.
the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
Like all the people that she would normally take out as a policeman or detective or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. Like
Because the
it's
one thing we know about Marcone is that he may be, an evil genius bad guy, but he's a bad guy that's got morals for
yeah,
the most part,
for the
right?
most
Like,
part, yeah.
yeah, he's
He's
better.
like
He's the least of all evils.
right.
Yeah,
And so it's like Murphy, you could have his backing,
his blessing. Yeah,
yeah, to go take out all of these other criminals,
yep,
and then you're left with the least of all
that's
evils.
right. And somebody that would utterly protect you because you work for
Yes.
him.
Yeah.
Loyalty
Oh
is Marcone's
man.
biggest thing, dude. You're
Yeah.
loyal to Marcone, you have the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, she should do it.
Man, for real, dude. For
And
real.
yeah, man. And then Guard later offers Murphy a job at Monarch,
That's right.
and she says you even have the hair for it and everything. Um
Yeah,
and we'll see. I'm just gonna
that's
say
true.
we'll see,
Yep,
we'll see.
that's true. Can't wait.
Then we see that Georgia was having bad dreams, just like the end of Changes
Yeah.
suggested, like in that monologue,
Yep.
Dresden's monologue at the end. He's like, it was known as the night of bad dreams, and all these pregnant women were just like having bad dreams. He's like, lots of people had bad dreams, but especially pregnant women.
For real. Yeah, because it was yeah.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to see the continuity
That's
in
right.
a short story that happens the same day as Changes.
Yep.
Georgia's having bad. I just thought it was cool, like continuity wise.
Totally. Yeah.
And then we get when Murphy is trying to infiltrate the. She's trying to follow the Fomar, and she binds up Billy and Marcy and puts them in her trunk. And then she dresses all like weird and gothic and just
Yeah.
crazy looking, and she like trades them to the Fomor. I thought that was really interesting. And then we got during the big Fomor fight, I liked how she thought to send shots
Mess with
everywhere.
the sonar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I loved how she had like Dresden in her mind, like talking shit to her, and he was like, you're taking your battlefield tactics from a movie from the like early 2000s.
Yep.
Like, what are you doing from a superhero movie? Did you ever see that one? You ever see Daredevil?
No, I've never seen the older Daredevil.
Okay, yeah, it was.
I've seen the new. There's a Netflix show, Daredevil.
Right, yeah. There's that.
But I haven't
one.
seen the older one.
Okay, yeah, the older one was really really good.
Yeah.
And basically how it worked is he would use his staff. He like carried around like a walking stick kind of thing, but it had like a blade in it, and it would turn into like nunchucks.
Oh,
and
cool.
And he would use it. He would like knock on stuff, and he was able to like
get
basically
a whole
like
picture
sonar.
of
Yeah.
And
anytime it would rain, he was able to see perfectly because the rain was coming down and hitting everything.
So it was like, echolocation. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And so
that's cool.
And so
could you imagine, dude? How fucking cool is that?
Right? Yeah, it's sick. And so that's what Murphy and Dresden in her head were referencing, where she's like, when it rained, when it was a constant thing, he could see everything. So I had to make it like scattered and wild.
That's right, not constant. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dresden's like, you're taking your shit from a superhero. Come on.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then one of the best lines from this short story, as far as like acting from James Marsters, and I wish I had saved the audio clip of it, is she gets through the fight like just barely, like she's barely survived it. She's kind of catching her breath, and she goes, damn it, Dresden, here I am doing your job. Damn it. And I just thought it was such a good line from James Marsters, because like she sounds like she's crying and exhausted and
just done.
Oh man, she's just had a day. And so I love that. And then Guard offers Murphy a job at Monarch. Murphy talks with Billy at the end. She tells him that Dresden's dead, and that that she wants to create a crew
I can take care of some of this shit.
Yeah, and she's like, you, me, and a few others will kind of like become the sheriffs of Chicago. And she's like, we'll keep watch on Chicago until Harry comes back. Yeah. She's like, I still haven't seen a body yet.
Yeah.
And Billy's like, you think he could come back? And she's like, I do. Like, I think he'll be back.
Yeah.
And woo!
Yeah. That's it, dude.
Alrighty.
That's it.
So that leads us into Ghost Story. And I am excited to talk about that. I'm even more excited to talk about Cold Days because it is one of my favorite books in the series.
Yeah.
Cold Days is in my top 3 for sure. I think it's my number 2.
Nice.
So yeah, I can't wait to talk about either of those. But before we go, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite short story from here?
Totally easy. The Warrior.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how could it not be The Warrior?
Yeah.
I think it's so good. It's the one that made me cry. There was a couple of these that made me cry at different points, but this one, The Warrior, was the one that made me feel the most. And I always love seeing Harry and Michael together.
Yep.
And what a good message too. Like, I think it has a good theme that you can take away from and use it in your normal life, just as kind of a something to remember, that all your little actions have consequences, whether they add up to good things or bad things. It behooves all of us to remember that the little things we do in our day-to-day do have serious consequences. And even if it may not seem like we're like fighting the fight for good on an epic scale by donating millions of dollars to charity or something,
or stopping terrorism or something,
right? Yeah. It's the little things that we do throughout our day that can kind of have a butterfly effect into things in the future. And so I think that short story just has a really positive message. And of course, just all the little moments in that book or in that story were so good.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, Gabe, this has been a long one. I did not expect a book of short stories to be one of our longer episodes that we've done.
At the same time, I think about it, I'm like, Dresden Files makes sense. You know?
All of our Dresden episodes are usually pretty lengthy.
A lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Well, dude, I cannot wait to talk about Ghost Story and the rest of them. I can't wait to do the other ones. I think looking at our schedule, it'll probably be after the first of the year, which is crazy to think about, that we've now, after the first of the year, we will have been doing the Dresden Files read along for like 3.5 years.
Okay, I was gonna say 3.
Yeah.
Awesome,
because I think we've already gotten to 3 years.
That is wild to think about, dude.
Yeah.
So I'm 26 right now. Means I was 23 years old when we started this. That's pretty wild.
That's crazy.
That's pretty wild.
So yeah, looking forward to that. I'm definitely looking forward to our Christmas episode. I cannot wait to see you and Chris in person.
So excited to have you guys over.
Yeah. And then we're gonna have Mick in the corner somehow. I'll edit him into the corner. And then we're also gonna have MJ Kuhn. I don't know if she'll stay for the whole thing, but she will be there to talk about her favorite fantasy books of the year. And yeah, I could not be more excited for that.
I'm excited.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Christmas season.
Yeah, I'm getting all my stuff in order, starting to look at like, okay, what do I want to pack up? What do I need to get ready for all that? I got someone to watch my dog.
Nice.
And I'm looking forward to Christmas for sure. I definitely like, now it's like the end of November. I'm like, shit, I gotta order stuff now. Like, I gotta order stuff right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've been doing too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So hopefully that'll all work out. But guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. That is going to wrap us up there. You can reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, and Patreon. And on Patreon, you can get exclusive content like our After Files episodes, like I said at the beginning, where it's just Gabe and I kind of dicking around. And also, you'll be supporting the podcast. You can get that exclusive content at just $3 a month at the bottommost tier, or you can support us at higher tiers if you just want to help out the channel. Also, liking and subscribing helps us out a ton. We always appreciate when you do that, or even if you just want to leave us a comment down below and let us know what your favorite short story was from Side Jobs. We would love to hear about that as well. But yeah, we are gonna go. It is super late here. We stayed up way too late doing this. I need to finish editing something and then I have to get to bed.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. But we love you guys. Thanks for watching. And until next time, you should probably seek a safer environment than this podcast, like traffic.
Nice.
And a big shout out to our first Night Angel tier patron, Shad Zaman. Thank you so much, man.